Hello everyone and welcome. This is Dark Harry speaking. We have handpicked a wonderful story for today. What if Wednesday Addams enrolled at Hogwarts with Harry and traumatized every professor? Snape met his match. New videos drop regularly, so subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated. And don't forget to like if you enjoy the story. Shall we begin? Here goes. Chapter 1. The girl with plates and poison. The candles flickered in the drafty Addams family mansion as Wednesday sat perfectly still at the round table, her pale hands resting atop a crystal ball that had turned an unusual shade of green. The family séance was going splendidly. They'd successfully contacted Great-Aunt Lavinia, who'd been decapitated during the French Revolution and always had the most delightful stories. And then they displayed my head for 3 days. The view was magnificent, came the disembodied voice from the crystal. Wednesday nodded appreciatively when a sharp tap-tap-tap at the window interrupted the macabre tale. A tawny owl perched outside, a letter clutched in its beak. "Mail's here," Wednesday said flatly, not moving a muscle. Uncle Fester bounded to the window. "Ooh, a delivery bird. Can I electrocute it?" "Fester, darling," Morticia chided gently, "let's see what it's brought before we decide on electrocution." The owl dropped the letter and fled before Fester could grab it. Gomez snatched the envelope mid-air with a fencing move. "Why, it's addressed to you, Wednesday." "How wonderful." He handed it to his daughter with a flourish. "Heavy parchment. Quality stationery. Someone has excellent taste." Wednesday examined the green ink address with mild interest. "Miss W. Addams." "The room with the Iron Maiden." "Addams Family Mansion, Cemetery Lane." She broke the wax seal bearing an unfamiliar crest and unfolded the letter. "I've been accepted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry," she announced, her voice maintaining its usual monotone despite the extraordinary news. "They want me to learn magic." "Magic?" Grandmama cackled. "As if you haven't been brewing poison since you were 5. Hogwarts?" Gomez's eyebrows shot up. "The British Wizarding School? How prestigious." "Why, I remember Cousin Vlad attended, though he was expelled for turning his professors into bats. Apparently that was the professor's job." Morticia glided over, placing a pale hand on Wednesday's shoulder. "What wonderful news. We always knew you were special, darling. Even more special than the rest of us." "They've sent a list of required items," Wednesday continued. "Wand, cauldron, robes." Her eyes lit up slightly. "And I'm allowed to bring a pet. A cat, owl, or toad." "What about Homer?" asked Pugsley, gesturing to the octopus tentacle slithering out of his shirt collar. "I'm taking Marie Antoinette," Wednesday decided, stroking the head of the huge black spider crawling up her arm. "The letter doesn't specifically prohibit arachnids." "That's my girl," Gomez beamed proudly. "Finding loopholes already." Wednesday folded the letter carefully. "We'll need to visit a place called Diagon Alley for supplies." "Shopping." Morticia clasped her hands together. "How dreadful. We'll make a family outing of it." The Addams family's arrival in Diagon Alley caused more commotion than a Hungarian horntail in a crystal shop. Lurcha's towering figure cleared a path through the crowd, while things scuttled alongside, occasionally darting into pockets just for fun. "Wands first, I think," Morticia suggested, guiding the family toward Ollivander's. The bell tinkled as they entered the dusty shop. "Mr. Ollivander appeared from behind a stack of boxes, his silvery eyes widening at the sight of the unusual family. "Ah, customers," he said cautiously. "Here for a first wand, are we?" "Yes," Wednesday replied. "Something with excellent poison conductivity, preferably." Ollivander blinked rapidly. "I don't typically categorize my wands by their toxin-channeling abilities, young lady." "Pity," Wednesday said. "I'll have to test them myself, then." For the next 30 minutes, Wednesday tried wand after wand. One set fire to Ollivander's ledger, another caused all the drawers to fly open simultaneously, and a particularly temperamental cedar wand sent a shower of black roses cascading from the ceiling. Interesting, Ollivander muttered, increasingly intrigued. Very interesting. You have unusual magic, Miss Addams. Wednesday Addams. Recognition flashed across his face. Addams. Of course. Your family has quite the reputation in certain circles. Gomez puffed up proudly. The oldest and darkest of pure blood lines. Though we've never been sticklers about it. Married a vampire once. Lovely fellow, terrible table manners. Ollivander disappeared into the back of his shop, returning with a dust-covered box. Perhaps this. I've had it for decades. Ebony, 12 3/4 inches, with a core of thestral hair. Quite unusual. Excellent for unconventional magic and death spells. Wednesday suggested hopefully. Transfiguration, Ollivander corrected with a nervous cough. And perhaps some of the more creative aspects of magic. The moment Wednesday's fingers wrapped around the wand, the shop grew darker, as if shadows were being drawn to her. A cold wind whipped through the closed room, and the candles flared blue. Perfect, Wednesday said, the faintest ghost of a smile on her lips. Ollivander rubbed his arms against a sudden chill. That will be 7 galleons. Please take it and go. The family's visit to Flourish and Blots proved equally eventful when Wednesday asked for books on experimental curses, causing the clerk to faint. At the magical menagerie, the animals cowered as she passed, except for a 3-headed snake that seemed rather taken with her. Can I keep him too? She asked Morticia, who was inspecting some bats. One pet at a time, dear. Besides, your father would be jealous. You know how he feels about being the only one who can charm reptiles in the family. Their final stop was Madame Malkin's, where the seamstress nearly stabbed herself with pins when Lurch groaned and things started measuring Wednesday himself. Standard black robes, Madame Malkin stammered. How fortunate they match your aesthetic. They're not black enough, Wednesday complained, examining the fabric. Do you have anything in a deeper shade? Something that absorbs light completely? These are the standard uniform robes, dear. I'll dye them properly later, Wednesday decided. With squid ink and nightshade. Much better contrast against freshly spilled blood. A blond boy being fitted nearby looked over with newfound interest. Are you starting at Hogwarts too? He asked, his pointy face curious. I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. Wednesday Addams. Addams? The boy's eyes widened. My father's mentioned your family. Said you're even older than the sacred 28 but too eccentric to be included. How disappointing, Wednesday deadpanned. I do so love being included in lists. Draco smirked. You'll be in Slytherin, no doubt. Best house there is. My whole family's been in it. How fortunate for Slytherin, Wednesday replied, her tone making it impossible to tell if she was being sarcastic. Before Draco could respond, Madame Malkin declared him finished, and he hopped down. See you at Hogwarts, he said, with a nod that was almost respectful. As the Addams family left Diagon Alley, laden with packages and having left a trail of disturbed shopkeepers in their wake, Wednesday clutched her wand and allowed herself the smallest twitch of anticipation. I think I'm going to enjoy school, she said, as Marie Antoinette crawled into her pocket. Pugsley looked disappointed. You won't forget to write about all the ways you torture your classmates, will you? I'll send detailed diagrams, she promised. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity as the Addams family made their way through the barrier, causing immediate disruption to the usual King's Cross chaos. Lurch carried Wednesday's trunk as if it weighed nothing, despite the concerning rattling sounds coming from within. Now remember, darling, Morticia said, adjusting Wednesday's perfectly straight collar, if anyone tries to bully you, paralyze them with fear, then strike when they least expect it, Wednesday recited. That's my girl. Gomez wiped away a proud tear. And your special care package is in your trunk. Bottom compartment, under the false bottom. The one with the poisonous plants or the one with the cursed artifacts? Both. Gomez grinned. We couldn't decide. Parents and students edged away from the family, creating a clear radius around them on the platform. Wednesday noticed a red-haired family nearby, the mother fussing over several children including a boy about her age with dirt on his nose. Those are the Weasleys, Pugsley informed her, having done reconnaissance. Blood traders, according to that blonde kid from the robe shop. They seemed nice enough when I asked if they knew any good explosive spells. Wednesday studied them with mild interest before turning her attention to a skinny, dark-haired boy with glasses who seemed lost and alone with his trolley. Something about his isolation resonated with her. 5 minutes until departure, Grandmama announced, consulting a watch that was actually a shrunken clock strapped to a dead man's wrist. Better board, Wednesday. The goodbyes were appropriately Addams-like. Pugsley attempted one last stranglehold, which Wednesday escaped with practiced ease. Morticia and Gomez presented her with a small box. A going-away present, Morticia explained. One of my finest breeding pairs of flesh-eating slugs. They're quite affectionate once they've consumed their first meal. Thank you, Mother. Wednesday accepted the gift solemnly. I'll name them after you and Father. After a round of kisses and threats of what would happen if she didn't write regularly, Wednesday boarded the train, finding an empty compartment toward the back. She settled in, Marie Antoinette perched on her shoulder, and opened Hogwarts, a history, to the chapter on famous school tragedies. The compartment door slid open, revealing the lost-looking boy with glasses she'd noticed earlier. Sorry, he said nervously, but is it all right if I sit here? Everywhere else is full. Wednesday regarded him silently for a moment. You look like you've been raised in a cupboard. The boy's eyes widened in shock. How did you, lucky guess? I've spent quality time locked in confined spaces. She gestured to the seat opposite. You may join me if you don't mind sharing with Marie Antoinette. The giant spider crawled down her arm onto the small table between them. To his credit, the boy flinched only slightly. I'm Harry. Harry Potter. He said it like it didn't matter, but watched carefully for her reaction. Wednesday Addams. She turned a page in her book. Your parents were murdered. Harry stiffened. Yes. Mine are very much alive. You'd like them. Everyone says they're to die for. She looked up. People seem to know who you are. They've been staring at you since the platform. Harry shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, it's weird. I only just found out I'm famous. For surviving when my parents didn't. Survivor's guilt is an interesting psychological phenomenon, Wednesday commented. I've studied it extensively. Before Harry could respond, the compartment door opened again, revealing the red-haired boy with dirt on his nose. Mind if I sit? Everywhere else is, he froze, spotting Marie Antoinette. Is that a bloody spider? No, she's not bloody yet, Wednesday replied. Though she is getting hungry. The boy looked torn between his desire to sit down and his apparent arachnophobia. Harry spoke up. It's okay. I'm Harry, this is Wednesday. The spider seems friendly. Marie Antoinette only attacks on command, Wednesday assured him flatly. Usually. All right. The redhead sat as far from the spider as possible. I'm Ron Weasley. As the train pulled away from the station, Wednesday caught a final glimpse of her family. Pugsley was attempting to lay on the tracks before Morticia elegantly pulled him back, while Gomez waved enthusiastically with his sword cane. Thing had somehow climbed onto the outside of the window and was now tapping goodbye to her. She raised one pale hand in farewell as Thing did an acrobatic leap back to Gomez's shoulder. Your family seems different, Harry ventured, having witnessed the display. We value that, Wednesday responded. Normal is an illusion. What's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. Ron's eyes darted nervously to Marie Antoinette. Right. Spider. Let's talk about something else. So, Harry Potter, do you really have the, you know? He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry lifted his hair to reveal the lightning scar. Interesting scar formation. Wednesday leaned closer to examine it. Curse residue, obviously. The magical signature is still active. Both boys stared at her. What? Ron asked. The scar. It's still magically connected to whatever caused it. She shrugged at their continued blank looks. It's pulsing. You can see that? Harry touched his scar self-consciously. My family has a gift for detecting dark magic. Great Aunt Ophelia could smell a curse from 3 counties away. Before someone cursed her nose off. The conversation shifted as Ron began explaining Hogwarts houses to Harry, with Wednesday occasionally correcting him based on her reading. Slytherin's where all the dark wizards come from, Ron insisted. Define dark, Wednesday challenged. Is it intent? Method? Aesthetic? You know, evil. Again, subjective. My family has been practicing what others call dark magic for generations. We've never served a Dark Lord. What house do you want to be in? Harry asked her. Wednesday considered. Somewhere I can experiment in peace. Their conversation was interrupted by a bushy-haired girl already wearing her Hogwarts robes, looking for a toad named Trevor. She introduced herself as Hermione Granger in a rather bossy voice. I've tried a few simple spells myself, for practice, and they've all worked for me, she was saying to Harry and Ron, before noticing Wednesday's book. Oh, you're reading Hogwarts, a history. Isn't it fascinating? I've memorized it all, of course. The chapter on the Chamber of Secrets is disappointingly vague, Wednesday replied. And they completely sanitized the account of the student dissections of 1357. Hermione's confident expression faltered. I don't recall reading about any dissections. The unexpurgated edition has been in my family for generations. Great-great-grandfather Alphonse donated the specimens. A moment of silence followed, broken when Ron muttered something about hoping he wasn't in the same house as either of these two nutters. We should change into our robes, Hermione finally said, eyeing Wednesday's plaited hair and black dress, which already looked remarkably like the uniform. I expect we'll be arriving soon. After she left, Ron performed a failed spell attempt on his rat, and the trolley lady arrived selling sweets. Harry bought a large selection, which he generously offered to share. Wednesday examined a chocolate frog card. Dumbledore. The current headmaster. Mother says he's eccentric but dangerously perceptive. Your mum knows Dumbledore? Ron asked through a mouthful of cauldron cake. They corresponded briefly about experimental transformation techniques. Something about transfiguring people into newts permanently. The remainder of the journey passed with Ron explaining Quidditch to Harry while Wednesday silently fed Bertie Bott's beans to Marie Antoinette, noting with satisfaction which flavors made the spider's legs twitch. When they finally arrived at Hogsmeade Station, the first years were called to boats by an enormous man named Hagrid. Wednesday regarded him with interest. Giant crossbreeding, she noted clinically. Fascinating genetic outcome. Harry looked surprised. You know Hagrid's half-giant? I didn't even know that. Obvious from the osseous structure and magical aura. She stepped into a boat, Harry and Ron cautiously joining her. My cousin ITT dated a giantess once. The relationship had its ups and downs. Mostly UPS, in his case. The boats glided across the dark lake, and Wednesday trailed her fingers in the water. There's a giant squid in here, she said with the first hint of genuine enthusiasm. And mere people. I wonder if they're the drowning kind or the singing kind. There's a difference? Harry asked nervously. Significant. One lures you to your death with beautiful music. The other just holds you under until you stop struggling. She looked almost wistful. I've always wanted to learn their techniques. Ron edged away slightly. When Hogwarts Castle came into view, even Wednesday paused her morbid commentary to take in the magnificent sight. Towers and turrets silhouetted against the night sky, windows gleaming with golden light, the ancient stone practically humming with magic. It looks like home, she said quietly. But with better structural integrity. They disembarked and followed Hagrid up to the castle, where a stern-looking witch introduced herself as Professor McGonagall and explained the sorting ceremony. While they waited, several ghosts floated through the wall, causing many first-years to scream. Wednesday merely observed with clinical interest. Partial manifestations. The spiritual essence remains but without corporeal density. She addressed the nearest ghost directly. What was your cause of death? The ghost, a portly friar, seemed taken aback. My dear child, that's hardly appropriate conversation for, I'm writing a comparative study of death mechanics, she explained. For personal interest. Before the conversation could continue, McGonagall returned to lead them into the great hall. Wednesday walked between Harry and Ron, her expression unchanging despite the magnificent enchanted ceiling and floating candles. It's not real, the ceiling, Hermione whispered from behind them. It's just bewitched to look like the night sky. I read about it in Hogwarts, a history, Wednesday finished. Though it could be made real with the proper ritual sacrifice. Hermione fell silent. The sorting hat was brought out, singing its song about the 4 houses. Wednesday listened intently, analyzing the complex charm work that allowed the hat to develop sentience. McGonagall began calling names alphabetically. Addams, Wednesday. A hush fell as Wednesday approached the stool. Something about her measured walk, straight posture, and unblinking gaze caused even the older students to pay attention. McGonagall placed the hat on her head, and Wednesday heard a voice in her mind. Well, 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 what do we have here? An Addams at Hogwarts. It's been decades since I sorted one of your line. My great-uncle Firedeath was expelled in 1931 for attempting to sacrifice a professor to ancient gods, Wednesday thought back. The family still celebrates the anniversary. Yes, I see that in your memories, the hat chuckled. Now, where to put you? Such a complex mind, absolutely brilliant, Ravenclaw could nurture that intellect. Loyalty to family that would impress Hufflepuff, though your methods might disturb them. Gryffindor could use your fearlessness, but Slytherin seems the obvious choice, Wednesday thought. I've been told we share aesthetic preferences. There's more to Slytherin than a fondness for darkness, Miss Addams. Though you certainly have ambition and cunning in abundance. But your brand of darkness is unique. You don't seek power over others, you simply exist as you are, unapologetically. I don't conform. I never have. No, you haven't. And you never will. That's what makes this difficult. You'd reshape any house in your image rather than be shaped by it. The minutes stretched on, the great hall growing restless at the hat stall. Finally, the hat chuckled again. I suspect Salazar himself would find you fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. Better be Slytherin. The Slytherin table applauded, though somewhat uncertainly. Wednesday removed the hat and walked calmly to join her new house, sitting next to a ghost covered in silver bloodstains who eyed her with surprising wariness. The Bloody Baron, she greeted him. Your chain manufacture is medieval Northern European. Impressive craftsmanship. The Baron, unused to being addressed directly by first years, nodded stiffly. I've been restoring a similar set from the Spanish Inquisition, she continued conversationally. The blood patina is challenging to maintain. Nearby Slytherins exchanged glances, unsure whether to be impressed or disturbed. The sorting continued, with Hermione going to Gryffindor. Wednesday noted with interest how disappointed the girl looked to not be in the same house, Draco Malfoy joining Slytherin, and eventually Harry causing a sensation by also being sorted into Gryffindor. When Ron predictably followed Harry to the Gryffindor table, Wednesday observed the dynamics with detached interest. Dumbledore stood to give his welcome speech, which consisted of nonsense words that Wednesday analyzed for hidden meaning, and then the feast appeared on the golden plates. "My parents would appreciate the dramatics," she commented to no one in particular, selecting the rarest pieces of meat. "Though Mother prefers a more gothic presentation." An older Slytherin prefect leaned toward her. "Addams. I've heard that name. Isn't your family involved in some seriously dark magic?" "We prefer the term misunderstood," Wednesday replied, cutting her meat with surgical precision. "Though the Romanian Ministry of Magic still has an outstanding warrant for my grandmother after the incident of 1967. Draco Malfoy, seated nearby, was listening with growing interest. "My father says the Addams vault at Gringotts goes deeper than even the Lestranges. We keep the more volatile heirlooms there," Wednesday confirmed. "After Uncle Fester accidentally animated the stuffed chimera in the East Wing." The conversation at the Slytherin table gradually centered around Wednesday as she matter-of-factly answered questions about her family with increasingly disturbing anecdotes. By dessert, she had established both her pure-blood credentials and her capacity for casual references to violence that made even the most pompous upper years uneasy. After dinner, the Slytherin prefects led the first years down to the dungeons. The common room, with its greenish underwater light and serpentine decorations, elicited Wednesday's first genuine compliment. "Atmospheric," she noted, examining a skull-shaped sconce. "Similar to our conservatory, though with fewer carnivorous plants." Their head of house, Professor Snape, arrived to deliver his start-of-term speech. His dark robes billowed impressively as he paced before them, speaking in barely more than a whisper that somehow carried throughout the room. "You have been sorted into Slytherin, the house of ambition, cunning, and greatness. I expect each of you to uphold our noble traditions and bring credit to our house. Slytherin looks after its own, we stand united to the outside world. Any disagreements are settled privately." His cold eyes swept over them, lingering momentarily on Wednesday, who met his gaze without blinking. "The other houses mistrust us. They will judge you more harshly, punish you more severely, and suspect you by default. This prejudice should not embitter you, but rather sharpen your resolve to prove your superiority through achievement." After outlining the house rules and expectations, Snape dismissed them to their dormitories. As Wednesday turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Miss Addams." A moment. She remained behind as the others filed out, standing perfectly still before the potion's master. "I knew your great-aunt Deliria," Snape said after a calculated pause. "A formidable potioneer." "She still experiments," Wednesday replied. "Though after the explosion that removed her physical form, she conducts research through possession of willing subjects." Something like amusement flickered in Snape's eyes. "Your family's reputation precedes you, Miss Addams. I trust you understand that at Hogwarts, certain, creative interpretations of magic are not encouraged." "You mean the dark arts?" "I mean magic that causes unnecessary harm to your fellow students," he clarified silkily. "Slytherin House cannot afford additional scrutiny." "I never cause unnecessary harm, Professor," Wednesday replied with perfect sincerity. "Everything I do serves a purpose." Snape studied her for a long moment. "Indeed. We shall see if your talents match your family's reputation. I expect excellence in my house, Miss Addams. I expect nothing less from myself." With a dismissive nod, Snape sent her to join the other first-year girls in their dormitory. The four-poster beds draped in green silk met with Wednesday's approval, though she immediately set about enhancing her space, placing Marie Antoinette's special habitat next to her pillow and arranging various questionable items on her nightstand. Her roommates, Pansy Parkinson, Millicent Bulstrode, Daphne Greengrass, and Tracy Davis, watched with varying degrees of apprehension as she methodically unpacked a collection of oddities including a shrunken head, a jar of eyeballs, and a small box that occasionally growled. "Is that allowed?" Pansy finally asked, pointing to the pulsating sack Wednesday was carefully placing in her trunk drawer. Probably not, Wednesday admitted. But it's just a juvenile heart stealer. Completely harmless unless you're in love. The other girls exchanged glances. You're not what I expected from an Addams, Daphne ventured. My grandmother mentioned your family once. Said you were powerful but odd. We cultivate oddness, Wednesday replied, placing a human tooth necklace on her bedside table. It keeps expectations low and visitors nervous. Well, I think you'll fit right in with Slytherin, Tracy decided with a nervous laugh. We could use someone who makes Snape look approachable by comparison. Wednesday considered this. He reminds me of my Uncle Crimp. Similar conversational style. Uncle Crimp was taxidermied after an unfortunate incident with a manticore. Silence fell across the dormitory. I'm going to sleep now, Wednesday announced, drawing her bed curtains closed. I suggest you do the same. Marie Antoinette hunts at night. Behind their own hastily closed curtains, Wednesday heard the other girls whispering and casting what they thought were subtle detection charms around their beds. She allowed herself the faintest smile as she drifted off to sleep. Marie Antoinette nestled contentedly on the pillow beside her. Breakfast the next morning brought the distribution of schedules. Wednesday examined hers with interest. Potions with Gryffindor first, noted Draco, who had apparently decided that Wednesday's family connections made her acceptable company. Should be entertaining. Snape hates Gryffindors. Hatred is a powerful motivator, Wednesday agreed. Though fear works better. The Slytherin first years walked to the dungeons together, Wednesday slightly apart as she consulted a small black journal filled with spidery handwriting. What's that? Pansy asked, trying to peek over her shoulder. Great-grandmother Slaughter's potion enhancements. She improved several standard recipes with more effective ingredients. Wednesday flipped a page. Mostly poisonous ones. You can't use different ingredients than assigned, Pansy protested. Snape would go mental. We'll see. They arrived at the potions classroom to find the Gryffindors already waiting. Harry gave Wednesday a small wave, which she acknowledged with a nod, causing Draco to scowl. You know Potter. We met on the train. He has an interesting curse scar. Before Draco could respond, the classroom door swung open and Snape ushered them inside. Wednesday selected a seat in the middle, close enough to observe everything but not so close as to appear eager. Snape began the class with his famous speech about bottling fame and brewing glory, his eyes lingering on Harry with unmistakable dislike. He then proceeded to interrogate Harry mercilessly about advanced potion ingredients. Potter. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Harry looked bewildered. Hermione's hand shot into the air. Wednesday simply observed the interaction with clinical interest. I don't know, sir, Harry admitted. Snape's lip curled. Fame clearly isn't everything. He ignored Hermione's frantically waving hand. Let's try again. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? Again, Harry didn't know. Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, Potter. After a third unanswered question about monkshood and wolfsbane, Snape finally addressed the rest of the class, explaining the answers with barely concealed contempt for their ignorance. Well? Why aren't you all copying that down? As quills began scratching, Snape's eyes fell on Wednesday, who hadn't moved. Miss Addams, perhaps you'd care to explain your inactivity? I already know that information, she replied calmly. Asphodel and wormwood create the draught of living death, though my family uses devil's snare extract to enhance the paralytic effects. Bezoars are found in goat stomachs, but the most potent come from goats fed exclusively on deadly nightshade for 7 days before harvesting. And monkshood and wolfsbane are the same plant, also called aconite, best harvested under a full moon while wearing gloves made from the skin of its previous victim. The classroom fell silent. Even Snape seemed momentarily taken aback. That last detail is not in your textbook, he finally said. No. It's in Great Aunt Deliria's personal journals. Along with 67 creative uses for aconite beyond simple poisoning. A gleam of genuine interest appeared in Snape's eyes. I see. And have you practical experience with potions, Miss Addams, or merely theoretical knowledge from your family journals? I've been brewing since I could reach the cauldron. Mother believes in hands-on education, especially with volatile substances. Indeed. Perhaps you can demonstrate this alleged expertise today. Snape turned to the blackboard. You will all be brewing a simple potion to cure boils. Instructions are on the board. Begin. As the students gathered ingredients, Wednesday retrieved her own collection of prepared components from her bag. Snape watched as she methodically set up her workspace with the efficiency of someone who had done this countless times before. While other students struggled with crushing snake fangs and weighing dried nettles, Wednesday worked with smooth precision, occasionally consulting her family journal and making subtle alterations to the standard recipe. Snape prowled the classroom, criticizing the Gryffindors and offering pointed advice to the Slytherins. When he reached Wednesday's cauldron, he paused, observing the perfectly simmering potion that had already achieved the correct color, despite being several steps ahead of everyone else. "You've added something," he noted, sniffing carefully. "Belladonna?" "Just a touch," Wednesday confirmed. "And powdered obsidian to stabilize the reaction. The standard recipe is needlessly time-consuming. Those alterations aren't on the curriculum, Miss Addams." "No, but they improve the efficacy by approximately 37% while reducing brewing time." Great-grandmother Slaughter documented the exact measurements after extensive human testing. The corner of Snape's mouth twitched. Human testing. The family has always volunteered. Uncle Fester holds the record for most simultaneous potion effects, 23, including 3 that should have been fatal. Before Snape could respond, a loud hissing filled the dungeon. Neville Longbottom had somehow managed to melt his cauldron, and his potion was seeping across the floor, causing students to jump onto their stools. Neville himself was drenched in the solution, angry red boils springing up all over his arms and face. "Idiot boy!" Snape snarled, clearing the spilled potion with one wave of his wand. "I suppose you added the porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire?" As Neville whimpered in pain, Wednesday observed the reaction with scientific curiosity. "Fascinating inflammatory response," she commented. "The facial distribution suggests a potential interaction with the ambient magic in his system." Snape sent Neville to the hospital wing, then rounded on Harry and Ron, who had been working nearby, docking Gryffindor points for not preventing the accident. When the class ended, students turned in vials of their completed work. Wednesday's solution was not only perfect in color and consistency but seemed to give off a faint glow. "Miss Addams," Snape called as they were leaving. "Remain behind." The other students filed out, Draco giving her an impressed look while Harry shot her a sympathetic one. "Your potion," Snape began, holding the vial up to the light, "exceeds standard first-year capabilities." "Thank you." That wasn't necessarily a compliment. Deviation from instructions can be dangerous. "Not if you understand the underlying principles," Wednesday countered. "The standard recipe is designed for safety margins that accommodate incompetence." Snape raised an eyebrow. "Most first years require those safety margins, as Mr. Longbottom so aptly demonstrated. I'm not most first years." "Clearly." Snape set down the vial. "Your great-aunt's journals. I would be interested in reviewing them. Some pages are written in blood and only become visible under specific conditions," Wednesday warned. "And the binding is human skin, which sometimes screams when touched by anyone outside the family." "I'm familiar with such security measures," Snape replied smoothly. "Though I admit the Addams variations sound particularly inventive." Wednesday considered for a moment. "I can share the non-lethal modifications. The truly interesting ones require an oath of secrecy enforced by slow liquefaction if broken." "That won't be necessary for now." Snape gave her an appraising look. You have potential, Miss Addams. See that you don't waste it on excessive creativity without purpose. She nodded, understanding the warning beneath his words. Purposeful creativity only. Got it. As she left the dungeon, Wednesday reflected that Professor Snape might be more interesting than she'd initially thought. He reminded her of the more rational branch of her family, the ones who channeled their macabre interests into structured pursuits rather than chaotic expression. The rest of Wednesday's first day passed in a blur of classes, each providing its own opportunity for her to demonstrate her unusual perspective. In herbology, Professor Sprout was simultaneously impressed and disturbed by Wednesday's extensive knowledge of poisonous plants. While your identification skills are excellent, Miss Addams, she said nervously after Wednesday had detailed 15 different ways to use Dittany for both healing and harming, perhaps we could focus on the non-lethal applications for now. If you insist, Wednesday replied, though you're excluding at least 60% of their potential. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall proved more challenging. While Wednesday grasped the theory instantly, her practical execution was hampered by what McGonagall delicately called an excessive focus on disturbing transformations. Miss Addams, the assignment was to turn a match into a needle, not into a miniature blood-drawing implement with her teeth. I thought the modification made it more functional, Wednesday explained. A standard needle is so limited in application. McGonagall's lips thinned to a nearly invisible line. Perhaps, but mastering the basic transformation is essential before attempting creative enhancements. In charms, tiny Professor Flitwick nearly fell off his stack of books when Wednesday's perfectly executed levitation charm sent her feather flying directly at another student's eye with alarming precision. Excellent control, Miss Addams, he squeaked after confirming no injuries had occurred. But perhaps focus on less targeted levitation in the future. By dinner time, the Hogwarts staff table was abuzz with conversation about the newest Addams to grace the school's halls. Wednesday, oblivious or indifferent to the attention, sat at the Slytherin table methodically dissecting her roast chicken while explaining to a fascinated Draco and a horrified Pansy exactly how one might reanimate it using certain forbidden rituals. Of course, you'd need the original head, she clarified. Substitutions lead to identity confusion in the reanimated subject. That's disgusting, Pansy declared, pushing away her plate. It's advanced magical theory, Draco argued, though he too had stopped eating. My father says necromancy is just misunderstood branch magic that the ministry suppresses because they fear its power. It's not necromancy, Wednesday corrected. It's reanimation. Different metaphysical principle entirely. Necromancy involves the soul. Reanimation is purely physical. After dinner, Wednesday spent time in the Slytherin common room, writing a detailed letter to her family about her first day. Several older students tried to peer over her shoulder, only to hastily retreat when they glimpsed illustrations that seemed to move in ways drawings shouldn't. She was just finishing when a commotion at the common room entrance caught her attention. A group of first-years returned from exploring the castle, excitedly discussing their discovery. The third-floor corridor that Dumbledore warned about. We found it. Did you go inside? Someone asked eagerly. Are you mental? He said we'd die a painful death. Wednesday looked up with interest. What kind of painful death? The explorers turned to her, suddenly uneasy. Don't know, admitted a second-year named Adrian Pusey. The door was locked anyway. Standard locking charm or something more complex? Wednesday inquired, closing her letter and sealing it with a drop of what appeared to be black wax but wasn't. Just a regular lock, I think. Why? I like to categorize potential death scenarios. Helps with preparedness. She stood, tucking her letter into her pocket. I think I'll investigate. You can't. Pansy protested. It's after curfew, and you'll get caught. Only if I'm seen. Wednesday headed for the entrance. Don't wait up. Before anyone could stop her, she slipped out into the dungeon corridor, moving with silent purpose toward the staircases. Years of sneaking around the Addams mansion, avoiding everything from animated furniture to Great Uncle Hellfire's randomly placed man-traps, had given Wednesday an almost supernatural ability to move undetected. She navigated the shifting staircases with ease, pausing occasionally to observe the portraits who whispered as she passed. One particularly observant painting of a medieval executioner called out, "Addams. I'd recognize that deadpan stare anywhere. Your ancestor Morticia the Merciless sat for me in 1352. Wednesday paused. Before or after she poisoned the royal family? During, actually. Remarkable multitasker, your ancestor. With a respectful nod to the portrait, Wednesday continued her journey, eventually reaching the third-floor corridor. Just as she approached the forbidden door, a soft meow alerted her to the presence of Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat. Wednesday knelt, extending one pale hand. "Hello there. You remind me of Kitty Cat. She was our family cat before the unfortunate pressure cooker incident of 1985. Mrs. Norris, normally eager to report students to Filch, approached cautiously. Wednesday reached into her pocket and produced what appeared to be a small, writhing mouse. Cousin ITT breeds these. Extra juicy. The cat's ears perked up, and after a moment's consideration, she accepted the offering, purring loudly. Good girl. Our secret. With Mrs. Norris distracted, Wednesday turned her attention to the locked door. A simple Alohomra charm later, she was slipping inside, closing the door quietly behind her. What she found exceeded even her expectations. A three-headed dog, she whispered, genuine delight in her voice. Just like Great Uncle Fester described from his expedition to Greece. The massive Cerberus was asleep but stirring at her entrance. Wednesday stood perfectly still, observing its rhythmic breathing, the twitch of its massive paws, and, most interestingly, the trapdoor visible beneath one huge foot. You're guarding something, she deduced, moving slowly around the perimeter of the room to get a better view. How fascinating. One of the dog's heads snuffled, then opened yellow eyes that fixed directly on her. A low growl rumbled from its throat, waking the other two heads. Wednesday didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her pocket again, removing what looked like a twisted flute carved from bone. Mother insisted I pack this. She said, you never know when you'll need to soothe a savage beast. She was right, as always. The bone flute produced an eerie, haunting melody when she played, a lullaby her mother had sung to her as a child, about pleasant dreams of eternal darkness. The Cerberus's 6 ears perked up, then gradually drooped as the music worked its magic. Within minutes, all three heads had settled back down, eyes closing reluctantly. Wednesday approached cautiously, still playing, until she stood directly beside the massive paw covering the trapdoor. Sleep well, guardian, she whispered between notes. Your secret is safe with me. For now. After one final circuit of the room to gather observations, she slipped back out, locking the door behind her. The journey back to the Slytherin dungeon proved uneventful, with even Peeves the poltergeist keeping a respectful distance after she fixed him with her unblinking stare. When she returned to the common room, only a few older students remained, studying by the greenish light. None questioned where she'd been, though several watched warily as she crossed to the girls' dormitory. In her bed, Wednesday added a postscript to her letter home. P.S. Hogwarts keeps a Cerberus on the 3rd floor. Responds well to great-grandmother's lament of the eternally damned. Clearly guarding something valuable. Will investigate further. Please send Uncle Fester's notes on Greek monster taming techniques. PPS made contact with the caretaker's cat. Potential ally secured through traditional Addams animal bribery. Mother would approve. PPPS Professor Snape reminds me of Grandfather Addams before the incident with the Swiss clock tower. Will attempt to determine if the resemblance extends to appreciation of exotic poisons. Satisfied with her first day at Hogwarts, Wednesday closed her eyes, Marie Antoinette nestled against her cheek, and dreamed of three-headed dogs and trapdoors leading to delightfully dangerous secrets. The next few weeks established Wednesday as Hogwarts' most unsettling first year. While her academic performance was exemplary, her approach to education left many professors questioning their life choices. In astronomy, she correctly identified not only the assigned constellations but also pointed out several star formations traditionally associated with death omens. "My family uses the constellation of the Bleeding Skull to time our major ritual sacrifices," she explained to Professor Sinistra, who subsequently requested a personal day. During flying lessons with Madame Hooch, Wednesday's broom responded to her command instantly, rising to her hand before she even said, "up." Her flying style, however, caused concern. "Miss Addams, while your control is impressive, we generally try to remain upright on the broom, not hanging upside down like a bat," Wednesday suggested, her braids dangling toward the ground as she maintained perfect inverted balance. "Mother taught me this technique. She says it provides optimal blood flow to the brain while offering an excellent dropping position for aerial attacks." In defense against the dark arts, Professor Quirrell's nervous stutter worsened considerably when Wednesday corrected his lecture on vampires. Actually, Miss Addams, garlic does repel vampires. Not Eastern European vampires with a Mediterranean diet, Wednesday countered. Great Uncle Vlad consumes garlic by the bulb. It's wooden stakes soaked in blessed wine that concern him, along with decapitation followed by separate burial of head and heart. Quirrell's turban seemed to twitch of its own accord as he changed the subject. Most surprising to everyone was Wednesday's performance in history of magic. While other students struggled to stay awake during Professor Bin's monotonous lectures, Wednesday listened with rapt attention, occasionally raising her hand to add gruesome details the ghost professor had omitted. "Actually, Professor, the Goblin Rebellion of 1612 involved the ritualistic use of wizard entrails as battle banners, not just standard beheadings. The practice was abandoned only after the entrails of one particularly powerful wizard continued fighting independently for 3 days." Even Bin seemed startled by these contributions, peering at Wednesday through his spectral glasses as if seeing a student clearly for the first time in centuries. "Most, informative, Miss Addams." "Addams," she corrected. "With 2 Ds. Like dead, but with an extra letter." The ghost nodded vaguely before drifting back to his notes. Despite being sorted into Slytherin, Wednesday maintained her connection with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They occasionally studied together in the library, where Hermione found Wednesday's encyclopedic knowledge both impressive and disturbing. "Your essay on the properties of Moonstone is fascinating," Hermione admitted, "though I'm not sure Professor Snape wanted quite so many details about its use in necrotic potions." "Knowledge is knowledge," Wednesday replied, sharpening her quill with a small knife that seemed designed for less academic purposes. "Artificial distinctions between acceptable and forbidden magic limit understanding. But there are ethical considerations," Hermione argued. "Some magic causes harm, all magic can cause harm," Wednesday countered. "A simple levitation charm can drop someone from a fatal height. Intent matters more than categorization." Harry, who had been listening silently, nodded. "She's got a point, Hermione. Look at what happened to my parents. Was it the spell that was evil, or Voldemort?" Ron flinched at the name. "Don't say it. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself," Wednesday commented. "Though names do have power in certain summoning rituals." Ron looked horrified. "You're not thinking of summoning you-know-who, are you?" "Of course not. Necromantic summonings require specific components tied to the subject. I have nothing of his." She paused. "Yet." Harry laughed nervously, unsure if she was joking. Their study session was interrupted when Draco Malfoy appeared, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. "Consorting with Gryffindors again, Addams," he drawled. "You're going to ruin your reputation." "Bold of you to assume I care about reputation," Wednesday replied without looking up from her parchment. "You should. Some wizarding families are better than others." Potter made his choice, siding with blood traders and muggleborns. He sneered at Ron and Hermione. "You're too smart to make the same mistake." Wednesday set down her quill and fixed Draco with her unblinking stare. My family has existed for centuries without concerning ourselves with the approval of others. We've been called dark wizards, monsters, and abominations. Her voice remained perfectly even. We consider these compliments. That's different, Draco protested. Your family's darkness is respectable. Pure. These Gryffindors and their muggle-loving, my Aunt Dementia married a muggle, Wednesday interrupted. Their children manifested unusual magical abilities, including spontaneous combustion. Fascinating genetic outcome. Draco looked taken aback. But your family is pure blood. My family values interesting qualities over arbitrary blood status. Uncle Fester finds Muggles' ability to survive without magic admirable. Says it shows cockroach-like resilience. Hermione wasn't sure whether to be offended or pleased by this backhanded defense. You're making a mistake, Addams, Draco warned. Slytherins stick together. I stick with whoever provides intellectual stimulation, Wednesday replied, returning to her essay. Currently, that includes these three. Your contributions have been noted and found lacking. Draco's pale face flushed as he stormed away, Crabbe and Goyle lumbering after him. Blimey, Ron breathed. I've never seen anyone shut Malfoy down like that. He's insecure, Wednesday observed. Classic compensation behavior through aggression and status seeking. Psychologically predictable, though tedious. Harry grinned. I'm glad you're not in Gryffindor, Wednesday. Pretty sure you terrify us all. I terrify everyone eventually, she replied matter-of-factly. It's an Addams family tradition. As Halloween approached, Hogwarts buzzed with excitement about the upcoming feast. Wednesday, however, viewed the holiday differently. Halloween is sacred in my family, she explained to a group of curious Slytherins. We commune with our ancestors, conduct midnight rituals, and celebrate the thinning of the veil between life and death. So, not much different from what everyone else does, then. Blaise Zabini asked skeptically. Our rituals occasionally require blood sacrifice, Wednesday clarified. Last year, Uncle Fester volunteered. He was only mostly dead for 3 days afterward. The Slytherin common room fell silent. You're having us on, Theodore Nott finally said. Nobody survives being mostly dead. The Addams family has a unique relationship with death, Wednesday replied. Great-grandmother has died 4 times. She says the afterlife is overcrowded and the accommodation subpar. On Halloween morning, Wednesday received a large package from home. She opened it at the Slytherin table, causing nearby students to edge away as various questionable items emerged: black candles that burned with blue flames, a small silver dagger with unusual markings, and several sealed containers with warning labels in a language no one recognized. What's all this for? Pansy asked nervously. Traditional Samhain observance, Wednesday replied, examining a vial of swirling red liquid. Mother sent everything I'll need for a proper Addams ceremony. You're not actually planning to perform rituals at Hogwarts, are you? Daphne Greengrass looked alarmed. That's got to be against about 50 school rules. 73, by my count, Wednesday confirmed. But some traditions transcend institutional regulations. Before the conversation could continue, the mail arrived, including a note for Wednesday from Hagrid, inviting her to tea that afternoon along with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. The groundskeeper wants to see me, she said, mildly surprised. Interesting. Why would Hagrid invite you to tea? Draco scoffed. He's hardly your sort. On the contrary. He has a fascination with dangerous creatures and lives on the edge of a forest full of potentially lethal flora and fauna. Wednesday tucked the invitation away. We have much in common. That afternoon, Wednesday made her way to Hagrid's hut, where Harry, Ron, and Hermione were already enjoying enormous cups of tea and rock-hard cakes. There she is. Hagrid beamed as he opened the door. Come in, come in. Been wantin' to meet ya properly. Wednesday stepped inside, immediately noting the various creature parts hanging from the ceiling, the massive crossbow by the door, and the slobbering boarhound in the corner. You collect trophies, she observed, gesturing to a particularly large fawn. Basilisk? Wah. Oh, no, Hagrid chuckled. Just a very old dragon tooth. Yevi got a good eye, though. Grandfather has a basilisk fawn collection. Highly poisonous, even centuries after extraction. Useful for certain rituals. Hagrid offered her tea in a bucket-sized mug. Harry tells me you're quite the expert on magical creatures. I have practical experience with many species considered dangerous or extinct, Wednesday confirmed, accepting the tea. My family maintains a private menagerie. For the next hour, Hagrid and Wednesday engaged in an increasingly technical conversation about various deadly creatures, their habitats, behaviors, and the best methods for approaching them. Harry, Ron, and Hermione watched in fascination as Hagrid grew more animated than they'd ever seen him. And, yeah, say your uncle actually raised a manticore? Hagrid asked excitedly. Until the unfortunate incident with the village children, Wednesday nodded. The survivors developed interesting immunities. Hagrid looked momentarily concerned before apparently deciding not to pursue that particular threat. Well, I've never seen a student with such knowledge of magical creatures. Yeah, should consider taking care of magical creatures in your third year. I intend to. Wednesday set down her untouched rock cake. I'm particularly interested in the creatures of the Forbidden Forest. Acromantulas, for instance. Hagrid's beetle-black eyes widened. Now, how would ye know about? Marie Antoinette sensed them, Wednesday explained, allowing the giant spider to crawl from her pocket onto the table. Arachnids communicate across species. She says there's a colony. Ron made a strangled sound and pushed his chair back. Hagrid stared at the spider, then at Wednesday, before breaking into a delighted grin. Well, I never. Yeah, brought a pet acromantula to Hogwarts. Isn't she a beauty? She's technically not an acromantula, Wednesday corrected. She's a Brazilian black widow variant bred by my great-grandmother for enhanced intelligence and size. The venom has been modified to cause paralysis rather than death. Usually. Fascinating. Hagrid extended one enormous finger, which Marie Antoinette delicately tapped with a foreleg. We'll have to introduce her to Aragog sometime. Aragog? Hermione asked weakly. Friend o' mine, Hagrid said evasively. Lives in the forest. The patriarch of the Acromantula colony, Wednesday clarified. Approximately 50 years old, judging by the web vibrations Marie Antoinette detected. Hagrid looked torn between being impressed and alarmed at her knowledge. As they prepared to leave for the Halloween feast, Hagrid pulled Wednesday aside. Listen, he said quietly, it's rare to find someone who appreciates, well, the more misunderstood creatures. If ye ever want to learn more about the forest inhabitants, ye come to me first, all right? Safer that way. Wednesday nodded. A guided tour would be efficient. I plan to explore independently, but your expertise would be valuable. No independent explorin', Hagrid insisted firmly. Promise me, Wednesday. The forest is dangerous even for someone with your unique perspective. I promise to consult you before any major expeditions, she compromised. Hagrid seemed to recognize this was the best he'd get. Fair enough. Now off to the feast with ya all. As they walked back to the castle, Ron shuddered. I can't believe you keep that thing as a pet. And that Hagrid wanted to introduce it to an even bigger spider. Marie Antoinette found your fear response fascinating, Wednesday informed him. She rarely encounters such pure arachnophobia. Great, Ron muttered. Now the bloody spider's analyzing me. She's quite intelligent, Wednesday confirmed. And an excellent judge of character. She likes you all, despite your fear. Especially Harry. Harry looked surprised. Me? Why? She says you taste of old death magic. Wednesday gave him a considering look. Interesting. Before Harry could respond to this disturbing assessment, they reached the castle, where students were already filing into the Great Hall for the Halloween feast. Are you coming? Hermione asked as Wednesday paused at the entrance. Shortly. I need to prepare for tonight's ritual first. You're not really going to perform dark magic at Hogwarts, are you? Hermione looked scandalized. Not dark. Old. There's a difference. Wednesday tilted her head slightly. Don't worry. It's a private family tradition. Mostly harmless. With that cryptic assurance, she disappeared down a side corridor, leaving the three Gryffindors to enter the feast without her. The Halloween decorations were spectacular, floating jack-o'-lanterns, live bats, and orange streamers. Students were just settling down to eat when Professor Quirrell burst into the hall, terror on his face. Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know. He collapsed in a dead faint. Chaos erupted until Dumbledore shot purple firecrackers from his wand to restore order. As prefects led students back to their common rooms, Harry remembered that Hermione was in the girls' bathroom, unaware of the danger. We've got to find her, he told Ron. As they slipped away from the Gryffindor group, they nearly collided with a small, dark figure moving purposefully through the shadows. Wednesday! Harry exclaimed. What are you doing? There's a troll loose. I know, she replied calmly. I'm going to observe it. Mountain trolls are typically aggressive but behaviorally predictable. I've never seen one up close. Are you mental? Ron demanded. It could kill you. Unlikely. I've studied troll physiology. Their reaction time is poor, and they're susceptible to confusion tactics. Well, Hermione doesn't know about the troll, Harry explained quickly. She's in the girls' bathroom, and we're going to warn her. Wednesday nodded. Logical. I'll accompany you. For against one troll improves the survival odds, though decreases my observation opportunity. They hurried through the corridors, only to freeze at the sound of grunting and massive footfalls ahead. It's left the dungeons, Harry whispered. Fascinating, Wednesday murmured, watching the troll's lumbering form. Approximately 12 feet tall, club-dominant, with the characteristic poor posture of northern mountain subspecies. Is this really the time for a nature documentary? Ron hissed. The troll entered a doorway on the left. The girls' bathroom, Harry realized with horror. A high-pitched scream confirmed their worst fears. Hermione, they shouted together, rushing toward the bathroom. Inside, they found Hermione shrinking against the wall as the massive troll advanced, knocking sinks from the wall with its club. Distract it. Harry commanded, throwing a pipe at the creature's head. The troll turned, confused by the noise, as Ron and Harry shouted and threw more debris. Wednesday, however, took a different approach. She stepped forward, directly into the troll's line of sight, and spoke in a deep, guttural language that seemed to catch the creature's attention. What are you doing? Ron squeaked. Primitive troll communication, she explained between harsh syllables. Great Uncle Slaughter documented their basic language patterns during his expedition to Scandinavia. Incredibly, the troll lowered its club slightly, tilting its head as it focused on Wednesday. It's working. Hermione gasped from her position against the wall. I'm asking if it's lost, Wednesday continued in English while maintaining eye contact with the troll. They're territorial creatures. This one is confused, separated from its mountain habitat. The troll grunted something that sounded vaguely like speech. What's it saying? Harry asked, fascinated despite the danger. It's expressing confusion and hunger, Wednesday translated. And something about smashing small creatures that invaded its space. The troll suddenly seemed to lose interest in the conversation, raising its club again with a roar. As it swung toward Wednesday, she didn't flinch or move. Wednesday! Hermione screamed. At the last moment, Wednesday sidestepped with surprising grace, causing the club to miss her by inches and embed itself in the stone wall. "Now, Harry," she called out. Harry, acting on instinct, leapt onto the troll's back and accidentally shoved his wand up its nose in the process. The troll howled in pain, thrashing wildly. "Ron, the club." Wednesday pointed to where the troll was trying to yank its weapon free from the wall. "Levitation charm." Ron pulled out his wand, his hand shaking. "Wingardium Leviosa." The club wrenched free from both the wall and the troll's grip, hovering in the air. Ron directed it above the troll's head and released the spell. The heavy club dropped with a sickening crack onto the creature's skull. The troll swayed, then crashed to the floor, unconscious. Harry extracted his wand from the troll's nose, grimacing at the grey slime covering it. "Gross." Wednesday knelt beside the fallen creature, examining it with professional interest. "Impressive cranial resilience. It's merely stunned, not dead." "Good," Harry said, relieved. "A shame," Wednesday sighed. "Troll skull fragments have useful potion applications. And the brain fluid has paralytic properties when properly harvested." The bathroom door burst open as Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell arrived, taking in the scene with varying degrees of shock. "What on earth were you thinking?" McGonagall demanded, cold fury in her voice. "You're lucky you weren't killed." Before the boys could respond, Hermione stepped forward. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. I went searching for the troll because I thought I could handle it. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead." Harry and Ron stared at Hermione in disbelief. Wednesday's expression remained neutral, though one eyebrow raised fractionally. "Miss Granger, how could you be so foolish?" McGonagall admonished. "The troll exhibits signs of territorial confusion rather than innate aggression," Wednesday observed, still examining the creature. "Its behavior suggests disorientation consistent with magical transportation rather than natural migration. Someone brought it into the castle deliberately." All three professors stared at her. "Miss Addams," Snape said silkily, "what exactly are you doing here with 3 Gryffindors when you should be in your dormitory with the other Slytherins?" "Comparative xenobiology field study," she replied without hesitation. The opportunity to observe a mountain troll in a non-native habitat was academically valuable. "You deliberately sought out a dangerous creature?" McGonagall looked apoplectic. "Knowledge often requires risk," Wednesday confirmed. "Besides, trolls are less dangerous than several specimens in my family's conservatory." Quirrell, who had been leaning against a toilet looking faint, gave a nervous giggle. McGonagall took a deep breath. 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for Miss Granger's serious lack of judgment. She turned to the boys. "As for you 2 gentlemen, well, not many first-years could take on a mountain troll and live to tell the tale. 5 points to Gryffindor for each of you." Her gaze fell on Wednesday. "And you, Miss Addams. Your house affiliation puts me in a difficult position regarding points." "I require no recognition," Wednesday assured her. The experience itself was sufficient reward. "Nevertheless," McGonagall continued, "your apparent knowledge of troll behavior may have prevented a tragedy, even if your presence here was wildly inappropriate. I shall leave any reward or punishment to Professor Snape." Snape's dark eyes bored into Wednesday. "We will discuss this incident in detail, Miss Addams. For now, 5 points to Slytherin for unconventional problem solving." The 4 students were dismissed to their respective dormitories, but as they departed, Wednesday noticed Snape's slight limp and the torn fabric near his ankle. Their eyes met briefly, Snape's narrowing in warning, Wednesday's noting the injury with analytical interest. In the corridor, Hermione stopped them. "Thank you all for coming to find me." "What are friends for?" Ron replied awkwardly. "Friends?" Hermione repeated uncertainly. "There are worse foundations for alliance than collective troll defeat," Wednesday noted. "Shared survival experiences create strong psychological bonds. Harry grinned. What she said. Friends. As they parted ways, Harry and Ron to Gryffindor Tower, Wednesday to the dungeons, Harry called after her. Wednesday. How did you know to tell Ron to use the levitation charm? She paused, looking back. I observed his technique in class. Despite his insecurity, his casting shows natural aptitude. The club was the obvious weapon given the circumstances. Ron's ears turned red. You noticed that? In Flitwick's class? I notice everything, she replied simply, before disappearing into the shadows toward the Slytherin dungeon. That night, while her roommate slept, Wednesday slipped out of bed to conduct her family's traditional Samhain ritual. In a secluded corner of the Hogwarts grounds, beneath the light of the full moon, she arranged the black candles and other items from home. Ancestors of the Addams line, on this night when the veil thins, I honor your memory and seek your guidance, she intoned, her voice carrying on the cold night air. Though separated by distance, the family remains unbroken. The candles flared with blue fire, and a chill wind swept across the grounds. For a moment, shadowy figures seemed to gather around her, pale faces with familiar features, watching with approval as their youngest descendant maintained traditions far from home. When Wednesday returned to her dormitory in the early hours of the morning, she carried with her the satisfied sense of having properly observed the most sacred of Addams' holidays, and the unexpected bonus of having made her first true friends at Hogwarts, even if one of them was terrified of her pet spider. As she drifted off to sleep, Marie Antoinette nestled in her hair. Wednesday reflected that perhaps Hogwarts would prove more interesting than she'd initially anticipated. Between three-headed dogs, mountain trolls, the mystery of the forbidden corridor, and the curious case of Professor Snape's injured leg, there was enough darkness and intrigue to keep even an Addams entertained. And she hadn't even been expelled yet. Mother would be so disappointed. Chapter 2, You'll be sorry. The first snow of December transformed Hogwarts into a winter wonderland that would have sent most children into fits of delight. Wednesday Addams, however, stared out the frost-covered window of the Slytherin common room with a slight frown. Too cheerful, she muttered, watching students frolic in the snow. Not enough shadows. Not a fan of winter, Addams? Asked Blaise Zabini, who'd gradually gotten used to her peculiar observations. On the contrary. Winter traditionally brings famine, hypothermia, and an uptick in mysterious disappearances. The Addams family celebrates it extensively. She turned from the window. But this manufactured merriment dilutes the season's true essence. The castle's Christmas preparations were in full swing. Hagrid had dragged 12 massive trees into the Great Hall, which Professor Flitwick decorated with magical ornaments and golden bubbles. Garlands of holly and mistletoe hung throughout the corridors, and suits of armor had been enchanted to sing carols whenever someone passed. Wednesday found this last feature particularly objectionable. The armor in our house sings too, she told Harry as they walked to potions, a suit of armor belting out, God rest ye merry gentlemen, behind them. But only death marches and funeral dirges. Much more appropriate to their original purpose. Harry grinned. Somehow that doesn't surprise me. Are you going home for Christmas? Unfortunately, no. The family is conducting an archaeological expedition in the catacombs beneath Paris. Mother doesn't want me to miss school. She sighed. I was looking forward to the excavation. Great-great-grandmother Morticia is supposedly buried there, though her tomb has always been mysteriously empty. I'm staying too, Harry said. Ron as well, his parents are visiting his brother Charlie in Romania. Romania has excellent vampiric culture, Wednesday noted. Uncle Vlad maintains a summer castle in the Carpathian Mountains. Perhaps Ron's family could visit. I could provide a letter of introduction. Harry wasn't entirely sure if she was joking. With Wednesday, it was often impossible to tell. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Draco Malfoy, who'd been increasingly hostile toward Wednesday since her friendship with the Gryffindor trio became common knowledge. Planning a cross-house Christmas, Addams, he sneered. I wrote to Father about your associations. He was very interested to hear how an Addams has fallen so low. Wednesday regarded him impassively. Your father's opinion matters to me approximately as much as the mating habits of flobberworms, which is to say, not at all. Draco's pale face flushed. My father is a powerful man with significant ministry connections. My father once challenged the Minister of Magic to a duel when I was 5. With actual swords. Wednesday's voice remained perfectly flat. The minister declined. Wisely. Before Draco could respond, Snape opened the dungeon door and gestured them inside with his usual scowl. The potions master's attitude toward Wednesday had evolved into a complex mixture of reluctant respect, professional interest, and perpetual wariness. She was undeniably his best student, brewing potions with a natural instinct that bordered on artistry, yet her tendency to improve standard recipes with occasionally alarming modifications kept him constantly on edge. Today they were working on forgetfulness potions, and Snape had specifically instructed Wednesday to follow the standard procedure, without creative enhancements. She nodded solemnly at this directive, then proceeded to measure her ingredients with scientific precision. Harry, working at the next table, watched her methodically prepare her materials while simultaneously keeping an eye on Snape's position in the room. The moment the professor turned to berate Neville for his bubbling cauldron, Wednesday extracted a small vial from her pocket and added 3 precisely measured drops to her mixture. What was that? Harry whispered. Distilled nightshade essence, she whispered back. Improves memory clearance by 43% while reducing brewing time. The textbook recipe is needlessly inefficient. Won't Snape notice? Only if he tests it personally. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Which I doubt he'll risk after last week's swelling solution incident. That particular class had ended with Marcus Flint's ears expanding to the size of dinner plates when he sampled Wednesday's slightly modified potion. Snape had been torn between irritation at the disruption and fascination with the enhanced efficacy of her brew. As predicted, Wednesday's forgetfulness potion finished brewing 15 minutes before anyone else's, with a perfect pearly sheen that even Snape couldn't criticize. He examined it with narrowed eyes. Miss Addams, your potion appears optimal. Thank you, Professor. Perhaps suspiciously so. He leaned closer, sniffing carefully. You've added something. I've optimized the stirring pattern and ingredient preparation, she replied truthfully, if incompletely. Snape studied her impassive face. 5 points to Slytherin for efficiency. Though I remain convinced you're not adhering strictly to the curriculum. The curriculum represents the floor of achievement, not the ceiling, Wednesday responded. My mother always says limitations are for those who lack imagination and a steady hand with toxins. Something that might have been amusement flickered in Snape's dark eyes. Indeed. Clean up your workspace, Miss Addams, and perhaps consider applying your evident talents to assignments as written, not as you believe they should be. I'll take it under advisement, she promised, knowing they both recognized this as diplomatic fiction. After class, Harry, Ron, and Hermione waited for Wednesday in the corridor. I can't believe you get away with modifying potions right under Snape's nose, Ron said admiringly. If any of us tried that, we'd be pickling rat brains until graduation. Professor Snape appreciates the subtle science of potion making, Wednesday replied. He may not approve of my methods, but he respects results. Speaking of results, Hermione lowered her voice, we still haven't found anything about Nicholas Flamel. I've been through half the restricted section already. You mean you've been sneaking into the restricted section? Ron interrupted, impressed. Hermione flushed. I have permission slips. Mostly. Flamel, Wednesday repeated thoughtfully. The name is familiar. You know who he is? Harry asked eagerly. Possibly. Let me consult my family grimoire. That evening in the library, the 4 of them gathered around a small table in a secluded corner. Wednesday produced a leather-bound book that seemed to pulse slightly when opened. Great-grandfather Alphonse's personal research journal, she explained. He documented his interactions with notable magical practitioners throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. The 17th century? Hermione questioned. But that would make him 347 at his most recent death, Wednesday confirmed. The family longevity is exceptional, though some would argue great-grandfather's 5 deaths and subsequent resurrections invalidate the continuous lifespan calculation. Ron's eyes widened. 5 deaths. The third one didn't take properly. He was ambulatory for nearly a decade before anyone realized he'd actually died of belladonna poisoning. The family thought he was just being quieter than usual. While the Gryffindors processed this disturbing information, Wednesday leafed through the grimoire, pausing occasionally to interpret faded text written in what appeared to be dried brown ink. Is that? Hermione gestured to the writing. Blood? Yes. Great-grandfather believed important knowledge should be recorded with appropriate solemnity. Wednesday continued turning pages. Also, he was going through an artistic phase. Finally, she stopped at a page featuring a sketched portrait of an elderly man with a long beard. Nicholas Flamel, alchemical pioneer, creator of the Philosopher's Stone, born approximately 1327. The Philosopher's Stone? Hermione exclaimed. Of course. I knew I'd heard the name, Harry said. It was on a chocolate frog card. Dumbledore worked with Flamel on alchemy. Wednesday traced the text with one pale finger. According to great-grandfather, Flamel used the stone to create the elixir of life, granting himself and his wife virtual immortality. They were reportedly living in Devon as of 1762, when great-grandfather visited to discuss experimental transmutation techniques. So that's what Fluffy's guarding, Ron whispered. The Philosopher's Stone. That small trapdoor wouldn't accommodate a traditional alchemical apparatus, Wednesday observed. The stone itself must be what's hidden. But who's trying to steal it? Hermione wondered. Wednesday closed the grimoire. Someone who desires immortality or unlimited gold. Both traditional motivators for theft and murder. Snape, Harry said firmly. It must be Snape. Remember his injured leg after Halloween? He tried to get past Fluffy. Wednesday frowned slightly. Professor Snape exhibits the calculated demeanor of someone with methodical ambitions, not desperate treasure-seeking. Besides, he already has access to the third-floor corridor as a staff member. Why choose Halloween specifically? As a diversion, Harry insisted. Everyone was at the feast, focused on the troll. Which someone had to let in, Wednesday added. I maintain the troll exhibited signs of magical transportation. Exactly. Snape let in the troll as a distraction. Wednesday didn't look convinced. Professor Snape's behavioral patterns suggest subtlety and precision. Releasing a mountain troll seems unnecessarily chaotic for his personality profile. I would expect something more elegant, like targeted poisoning. You really have thought a lot about how Snape would commit crimes, haven't you? Ron observed nervously. I analyze everyone's optimal murder methodologies, Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. It's a personal hobby. Hermione cleared her throat. Setting aside Wednesday's hobby, we still need more information. We know what Fluffy's guarding, but not who's after it or what other protections might exist. The dog is first-level security, Wednesday reasoned. Logic suggests additional safeguards, likely contributed by different professors to create varied magical challenges. Harry nodded. We should keep an eye on Snape, and Professor Quirrell, Wednesday interjected. His behavior patterns show inconsistencies worth investigating. Quirrell. Ron scoffed. He's afraid of his own shadow. Precisely why his continued employment as defense professor is suspicious. Either his competence is being masked by an elaborate performance, or Hogwarts hiring standards are concerning. She paused. Possibly both. Before they could debate further, Madame Pants descended upon them, outraged at the sight of Wednesday's grimoire. What is that? She demanded, pointing a bony finger at the book, which had begun to emit a faint moan. Family heirloom, Wednesday replied calmly. It gets restless around sunset. Out. All of you. And that thing is absolutely forbidden in my library. As they hurried out, the grimoire snapped at Madame Pance's retreating fingers, causing her to yelp in alarm. Your book tried to bite her, Hermione said, sounding both horrified and fascinated. It's feeding time, Wednesday explained. Great-grandfather enchanted it to sustain itself on strong emotions. Fear and outrage are particular favorites. Your family is completely mental, Ron declared, though his tone held a hint of admiration. Thank you, Wednesday replied, taking it as the compliment it was. The last week of term brought increased excitement about the upcoming holidays. Professor Flitwick taught them to enchant ornaments that sang in multi-part harmony, though Wednesday's contribution to the class project produced a haunting dirge that caused several students to burst into unexpected tears. Most impressive atmospheric charm work, Miss Addams, Flitwick squeaked after calming the affected students. Though perhaps more appropriate for a funeral than a Christmas celebration. The holidays traditionally incorporated memento mori themes before commercialization sanitized them, Wednesday countered. Death and rebirth are the season's true essence. Flitwick blinked rapidly. Yes, well, perhaps save that particular enchantment for your personal decorations. In Transfiguration, they learned to transform matchsticks into silver bells, a seasonal variation on their first lesson. Wednesday's bell emerged perfectly formed but tolled with a deep, sonorous ring that Professor McGonagall described as disturbingly ominous. The specific resonance frequency induces mild existential dread, Wednesday explained. Great Aunt Morticia uses similar tones in her meditation chamber. McGonagall pinched the bridge of her nose. 5 points to Slytherin for exceptional transfiguration, Miss Addams, but please refrain from incorporating psychological warfare elements into future assignments. Even herbology took on a festive theme, with Professor Sprout teaching them to care for magical poinsettias whose red blooms sparkled like tiny stars. These varieties are purely decorative, Sprout explained cheerfully, unlike their more dangerous tropical cousins. Wednesday raised her hand. The Sanguis pulcherrima variant cultivated by the Amazonian Yaxtha tribe produces sap that reportedly induces hallucinogenic visions of one's own death. Has Hogwarts considered adding these to the curriculum? Professor Sprout's smile faltered. No, Miss Addams, we have not. Nor do we intend to. Pity. The diagnostic applications for terminal divination are substantial. By the time term ended, the professors seemed almost relieved to bid temporary farewell to Wednesday's unsettling academic contributions. The day after most students departed for home, Wednesday received an enormous package delivered by 6 struggling school owls and a raven that appeared to be directing their efforts with harsh caws. Edgar. Wednesday greeted the raven, who landed on her shoulder with obvious affection. Mother sent you to supervise. The bird made a sound remarkably like a sardonic laugh. Family pet? Harry asked, joining her at the Slytherin table where she sat alone with her delivery. Mother's familiar, Wednesday corrected. He's been with the family for generations. We're not entirely sure how long, since he predates our written records. The raven fixed Harry with an unervingly intelligent stare. He likes you, Wednesday noted with mild surprise. That's unusual. Edgar typically dislikes everyone outside the family. Last year he removed the mailman's index finger. Harry instinctively tucked his hands into his pockets. Charming. What's in the package? Christmas gifts from home. Would you like to join me in opening it? The Slytherin common room is tediously empty. Harry hesitated. Am I allowed in Slytherin? House segregation is a social construct perpetuated by arbitrary tradition, Wednesday replied, already standing with the package. Besides, there are only 3 Slytherins remaining for the holiday. None will object if they value their continued well-being. Taking this less than reassuring statement at face value, Harry followed Wednesday to the Slytherin dungeon, where she spoke the password, serpentine, to a stretch of stone wall that slid open to reveal a long, low underground room with greenish lamps and carved chairs. "Cozy," Harry commented, taking in the skulls decorating the mantelpiece. "Very, you." "It lacks the homey touch of real cobwebs," Wednesday critiqued, "but the dungeon aesthetic has a certain charm." She placed the package on a table and began methodically unwrapping it. Inside was a collection of smaller parcels along with a letter written on black parchment. "Mother sends her regards," Wednesday said, scanning the note. "The family expedition to the Paris catacombs has been productive. They've discovered a previously sealed chamber containing what appears to be a colony of mutated, eyeless humanoids. Pugsley is ecstatic, he's always wanted to discover a new subterranean species. Your brother sounds interesting. He takes after father." Explosive enthusiasm, both figuratively and literally. Wednesday began opening the individual packages, revealing a series of increasingly disturbing items. The first contained what appeared to be a shrunken head with alarmingly fresh-looking features. "Uncle Fester's handiwork," Wednesday explained, setting it carefully on the table. "He's been experimenting with preservation techniques." Next came a black velvet box containing a silver locket. "From mother and father," she said, opening it to reveal a small compartment filled with fine gray powder. "Grandmother's ashes. The portion that didn't animate during last year's séance, at least." Harry tried and failed to keep his expression neutral. Additional packages revealed a set of ornate bone-handled knives, for potions class, harvested from authentic 15th-century plague victims, a black orchid that seemed to pulse gently, it feeds on shadow magic, and a jar of suspicious-looking cookies, Grandmama's special recipe. The secret ingredient is classified by the Romanian ministry as a controlled substance. The final and largest package contained something that made even Wednesday pause. "How thoughtful," she said, lifting out what appeared to be a life-sized doll dressed in Victorian morning clothes. Its porcelain face was unnervingly realistic, with glass eyes that seemed to follow movement. "Is that a doll?" Harry asked uncertainly. "Marie," Wednesday confirmed. "My first companion. Mother has kept her preserved." She stroked the doll's dark hair almost tenderly. "The original Marie Antoinette was named after her." As if summoned by her namesake, the giant spider crawled from Wednesday's pocket and onto the doll's shoulder, where she settled contentedly. "They always got along," Wednesday observed. The doll's head turned slightly toward the spider. Harry jumped back. It moved. Of course. Marie was handcrafted by great-great-grandmother Ophelia, who specialized in semi-sentient creations. She's not fully animate, but she responds to the family bloodline and our familiar companions. The doll's porcelain hand twitched, fingers curling gently around Marie Antoinette. "She'll make an excellent addition to my dormitory," Wednesday decided. "Pansy already sleeps poorly. This should enhance her insomnia significantly." Harry shook his head in amazement. "Your family really goes all out for Christmas gifts. These are relatively tame. Last year Pugsley received a functioning guillotine." She paused. "Would you like a cookie? They're non-lethal to non-relatives, mostly." "I'll pass, thanks," Harry said quickly. Wednesday shrugged. "Your loss. The hallucinogenic effects are quite educational." She began gathering her gifts. "I should set these up in my dormitory before presenting my family's gift to the Great Hall." Harry looked alarmed. "Gift to the Great Hall? What exactly are you planning?" "Mother insisted I share some Addams holiday traditions with my new school. It would be disrespectful to refuse." Harry had a sudden vision of the entire school experiencing whatever passed for festive in the Addams household. Maybe run it by a professor first. "That would spoil the surprise element," Wednesday replied reasonably. "Don't worry. It's perfectly safe, assuming no one has serious heart conditions or acute coulrophobia." Before Harry could ask what coulrophobia was, though he had an uneasy feeling he was about to find out, they were interrupted by the arrival of Ron, who had come looking for Harry. There you are. I've been, bloody hell, is this the Slytherin common room? We're not supposed to be in here. He froze, noticing the assortment of macabre items on the table. What is all that? Christmas gifts from my family, Wednesday explained. Would you like a cookie? Harry declined. Harry showed good judgment for once, Ron replied, eyeing the jar suspiciously. Are those eyeballs in the design? Raisin substitutes, Wednesday confirmed. More nutritious. Ron looked faintly green. I came to tell you Hagrid's invited us for tea. He's got a Christmas tree he wants to show us. Excellent timing, Wednesday said, picking up the doll. I need to speak with him about proper forest access points for tonight's ceremony. Ceremony? Both boys asked in unison, exchanging worried glances. The Addams Yule offering. It's traditionally performed at the winter solstice, preferably in ancient woods with established magical ecosystems. She stood, Marie cradled in one arm. The Forbidden Forest is ideal. You can't go into the Forbidden Forest. Ron protested. It's, well, forbidden. Rules often fail to account for essential cultural practices, Wednesday replied calmly. Besides, I promised Hagrid I'd consult him before any major forest expeditions. I'm merely honoring that commitment. Unable to argue with this disturbing logic, Harry and Ron helped Wednesday transport her gifts back to her dormitory, though neither would enter the girls' area, leaving Wednesday to arrange Marie in what she described as optimal surveillance position, on her own. They then headed to Hagrid's hut, where they found him trimming a massive fir tree with unusual ornaments. Ah, there ya are. Hagrid beamed. Come in, come in. Just finishing the decorations. Inside, they discovered the ornaments were actually fairy-filled lanterns and preserved magical creatures arranged artistically among the branches. That's a mackled malaclaw. Ron exclaimed, pointing to a lobster-like creature preserved mid-pinch. Good eye. Hagrid nodded approvingly. Got a whole collection of specimens over the years. Seemed a shame to waste M. Wednesday examined the tree with newfound respect. A memorial display honoring fallen creatures. Much more meaningful than the conventional decorative approach. Hagrid looked pleased. Exactly. Tea, anyone? As they settled around Hagrid's massive table with steaming mugs and rock cakes, which only Wednesday attempted to eat, prompting Fong to regard her with new respect, she broached the subject of her planned ceremony. I require access to the Forbidden Forest tonight for a traditional family observance. I'd welcome your guidance on the most suitable location. Hagrid nearly choked on his tea. The forest? At night? Absolutely not. The winter solstice has particular magical significance, Wednesday explained. The ceremony honors the longest night and the creatures that thrive in darkness. My family has performed it for centuries. It's too dangerous, Hagrid insisted. All sorts of things in those woods, especially at night. The danger is precisely why the ritual is effective, Wednesday countered. Fear heightens magical conductivity. Hagrid looked torn between his responsibilities as gamekeeper and his evident fascination with unusual magical traditions. What exactly does this ceremony involve? Nothing illegal by British wizarding standards, Wednesday assured him. A small blood offering, mine, of course, some ritualistic chanting, and a ceremonial invitation to forest entities to join in communion. Communion? Ron squeaked. With what? Forest spirits, primarily. Sometimes deceased ancestors. Wednesday shrugged. The metaphysical boundaries become permeable at solstice points. Hagrid stroked his beard thoughtfully. I can't let a Furzier wander the forest alone, no matter what traditions your family has. I anticipated that response, Wednesday nodded. Which is why I'm proposing you accompany me as cultural observer. The presence of a knowledgeable forest guardian would actually enhance the ceremony's efficacy. Harry had to admire her strategy. By appealing to both Hagrid's interest in magical creatures and his pride in his forest expertise, she'd nearly won him over already. Well. Hagrid hesitated. I suppose if I'm with ya, and we don't go too deep in. The edge of the forest would be sufficient, provided we find a clearing with direct moonlight access. There's a spot not far in, Hagrid admitted. Gets good light when the moon's high. Use it myself sometimes for planting certain herbs that need night harvesting. Perfect, Wednesday said with satisfaction. Shall we proceed at 11? The optimal time is midnight, but we'll need to prepare the space. Somehow, by the time they left Hagrid's hut, he'd not only agreed to facilitate Wednesday's forest ritual but seemed genuinely excited about it, regaling them with stories of other magical traditions he'd witnessed in his travels. Remind me never to negotiate with you, Harry muttered to Wednesday as they walked back to the castle. You're terrifyingly persuasive. Negotiation is simply identifying what the other party values and leveraging it appropriately, she replied. Great-grandmother wrote a book on the subject. Coercion, Manipulation, and Other Social Niceties. Bestseller, was it? Ron asked sarcastically. In certain circles. Several copies were allegedly found in restricted ministry archives after they were used to negotiate the Goblin Treaty of 1762. When they reached the castle, Wednesday excused herself to prepare for both her evening ceremony and her promised gift to the Great Hall, leaving Harry and Ron to speculate wildly about what horrors the Addams family considered appropriate Yuletide offerings. They didn't have to wait long to find out. At dinner that evening, as the remaining students and teachers gathered in the Great Hall, decorated magnificently with the 12 towering Christmas trees and thousands of magical icicles, Wednesday approached the front of the room carrying a large, covered cage. Miss Addams? Professor McGonagall questioned as Wednesday placed the cage on the floor before the high table. What is the meaning of this? A cultural exchange, Professor, Wednesday replied solemnly. My mother suggested I share an Addams family tradition with Hogwarts as a gesture of intertraditional magical cooperation. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with interest. How thoughtful. And what tradition might this be, Miss Addams? The releasing of the Yule spirits, she explained, her hand on the cage cover. Traditionally performed at the winter solstice to honor the chaotic energies of midwinter darkness. Before any of the professors could inquire further about these chaotic energies, Wednesday pulled off the cage cover, revealing dozens of what appeared to be tiny, grinning clowns with razor-sharp teeth and bat-like wings. Cornish candy pixies, she announced. A distant cousin of the Cornish blue variety, but with enhanced aggression and a particular affinity for festive environments. For one frozen moment, everyone stared at the caged creatures, which leered back with malevolent anticipation. Then Wednesday calmly opened the cage door. What followed could only be described as calculated pandemonium. The candy pixies erupted from their confinement in a cloud of maniacal giggles and multicolored streaks, immediately targeting the Christmas decorations. They began dismantling the carefully placed ornaments, transforming them into tiny weapons which they used to dive-bomb the screaming students. Fascinating behavioral pattern, Wednesday observed placidly as a pixie attempted to shove a miniature candy cane up a Hufflepuff's nose. The Brazilian variety's mother usually releases prefer direct hair-pulling tactics. Immobilis. Professor Flitwick squeaked, freezing several pixies mid-attack. McGonagall and Snape quickly joined in, firing containment spells while Hagrid attempted to recapture the creatures with a butterfly net. Miss Addams. McGonagall shouted over the chaos. What possessed you to release these monsters in the Great Hall? Cultural tradition, Wednesday repeated calmly, ducking as a pixie whizzed past with a stolen fork. The unexpected disruption of order symbolizes the wild forces of winter that must be acknowledged before they can be contained. A warning would have been appropriate. McGonagall's hat was now being used as a pixie battleground. That would have undermined the symbolic value of chaotic intrusion, Wednesday explained reasonably. Predictable chaos is merely choreographed inconvenience. It took nearly 30 minutes for the combined efforts of the staff to capture or immobilize all the pixies. By then, the great hall looked as though a small, decoration-fixated hurricane had torn through it. Tinsel hung in shredded strands from the enchanted ceiling, ornaments had been repurposed as projectiles, and several students sported minor injuries from pixie attacks. "Well," Dumbledore said finally, straightening his hat, which had somehow been transfigured to include blinking lights that spelled out, "Bite me," in festive colors, "that was certainly invigorating." Invigorating? Professor Sprout spluttered, picking candy cane fragments from her hair. It was a disaster. On the contrary, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled more than ever. It was precisely as Miss Addams described, a vivid demonstration of winter's chaotic energies. And I must say, the pixies displayed remarkable creativity in their decoration repurposing. Wednesday nodded appreciatively. They're naturally artistic. The tooth marks they leave are considered collectible in certain Romanian villages. Professor Snape, who had maintained his dignity better than most during the pixie assault, though one particularly bold specimen had turned his hair temporarily green, approached Wednesday with narrowed eyes. "Miss Addams, while your cultural contribution was undoubtedly educational, I believe detention is in order. Perhaps something appropriately seasonal, like helping Filch remove pixie-induced graffiti from the suits of armor." "That seems fair," Wednesday agreed. "Consequences are an important part of the tradition. At home, Grandmama usually spends 3 days catching escapees in the attic afterward." "Detention with Filch tomorrow evening, then," Snape declared. "And 20 points from Slytherin for unauthorized creature release. And 10 points to Slytherin," Dumbledore added cheerfully, "for outstanding intercultural educational initiative. Now, shall we continue our dinner? The house elves have outdone themselves with the pudding." As normalcy gradually returned to the Great Hall, Harry and Ron stared at Wednesday with a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration when she rejoined them at the Gryffindor table, house divisions being relaxed during the holidays. "That was mental," Ron declared. "Absolutely mental." "Thank you," Wednesday replied, serving herself Christmas pudding. Though the Pixies' performance was somewhat restrained. Mother typically starves them for 3 days beforehand to enhance their aggression. These weren't aggressive enough. Harry gestured to a Ravenclaw whose eyebrows had been partially eaten away. "They didn't draw significant blood," Wednesday pointed out. "A traditional Addams Yuletide typically results in at least one hospitalization." "Remind me never to spend Christmas with your family," Ron muttered, unconsciously touching his intact eyebrows. "You'd enjoy it," Wednesday assured him. Mother's Christmas feast includes 17 courses, each representing a different historical poison. All neutralized, of course. Mostly. Despite the Pixie incident, or perhaps because of it, the Christmas spirit in the castle remained undimmed. After dinner, Harry and Ron convinced Wednesday to join them in a game of wizard chess in the Gryffindor common room, where her methodical, almost ruthlessly sacrificial playing style proved surprisingly effective. "Checkmate," she announced for the 3rd time, as her queen dragged Ron's king from the board with distinct satisfaction. "How are you so good at this?" Ron demanded, both impressed and frustrated. "Even Harry can't beat me." "I learned strategy from Great-Uncle Crimp," Wednesday explained. "He was chess champion of the Romanian Asylum for the Criminally Insane for 17 consecutive years." "Was he a patient or a doctor?" Harry asked cautiously. "Both, at various points." The transition was seamless, as he continued wearing the same straitjacket either way. As the evening grew late, Wednesday excused herself to prepare for her midnight forest ritual with Hagrid. She returned to her dormitory to collect the necessary items, arranging them carefully in a black velvet bag, black candles, a silver ceremonial knife, her bone flute, a vial of what appeared to be quicksilver but wasn't, and several herbs tied with hair from various Addams ancestors. At 11 o'clock, she met Hagrid at the edge of the forest. He carried his crossbow and had Fong at his side, though both seemed more like habitual precautions than necessities. "Ready for your ritual, then?" he asked, eyeing her bag curiously. "Yes. The moon is positioned correctly, and the wind direction is favorable." They ventured into the forest, Hagrid leading the way to the clearing he'd mentioned. It was indeed ideal, a small open space surrounded by ancient trees, with the winter moon casting silver light across untouched snow. Wednesday methodically prepared the site, placing candles at specific points to form a pattern that Hagrid observed was not unlike a acromantula's web, but with them extra points there. The geometric configuration enhances etheric conductivity, she explained, measuring distances with precise steps. Great-grandmother Morticia refined the design after her third death experience revealed improved spectral communication techniques. Right, Hagrid nodded, pretending to understand. And the, blood offering you mentioned. Wednesday removed the ceremonial knife. Just a small cut on the palm. The Addams bloodline has certain properties that attract spiritual entities. Nothing dangerous unless you have a particular sensitivity to manifested ancestral energy. Good to know, Hagrid muttered, suddenly looking less enthusiastic about his observer role. The ritual itself was both simpler and stranger than Hagrid had anticipated. Wednesday stood in the center of her candle arrangement, speaking words in a language that seemed to slide uncomfortably around his ears rather than enter them directly. The winter air grew noticeably colder, and the shadows between the trees deepened despite the brightness of the moon. When she made a shallow cut across her palm, allowing 3 drops of blood to fall onto the snow, Hagrid thought he heard whispering from the forest depths, voices too numerous and overlapping to distinguish words, but carrying an unmistakable feeling of ancient awareness. The candle flames turned blue, then black, burning steadily despite the winter breeze that had begun to circle the clearing like a sentient thing. Wednesday played her bone flute briefly, a melody that made Fong whine and press against Hagrid's legs. Then, most disconcertingly, she stood in complete silence for nearly 10 minutes, head tilted slightly as if listening to voices only she could hear. Occasionally she nodded or made small gestures with her wounded hand, apparently responding to unseen presences. Finally, the candles returned to normal flames, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Wednesday methodically packed her ritual items, leaving only the 3 drops of blood, which had melted perfect circles in the snow. "Thank you for your cooperation," she said to the forest at large, before turning to Hagrid. "The ceremony was successful. The forest entities acknowledge our respect and grant safe passage for legitimate educational purposes." "Did ya talk to something out there?" Hagrid asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "Several somethings," Wednesday confirmed. "The forest has multiple overlapping awareness layers. The oldest was particularly articulate, though its concept of time is distressingly non-linear." "What did they say?" Hagrid's academic interest had overcome his initial unease. "Various observations. The centaurs have been agitating about planetary alignments. The Acromantula colony is expanding beyond sustainable territory. Something ancient sleeps beneath the north section but stirs occasionally." She paused. "Also, the forest approved of my bloodline. Apparently Great-Aunt Deliria spent significant time here during her Hogwarts years, communing with the more carnivorous plant species." Hagrid shook his head in amazement. "Ya really do have a way with magical places, Wednesday. Not many could sense all that, even with fancy rituals. The Addams perception is naturally attuned to liminal spaces and entities others find disturbing." She gathered her bag. "The forest also mentioned a unicorn wounded by something that leaves death in its wake. You might want to investigate that." This information instantly shifted Hagrid's demeanor from fascinated to concerned. "Wounded unicorn? That's serious business. What else did it say?" "Only that the predator is neither fully alive nor properly dead, and hunts by moonlight." Wednesday looked thoughtful. "The description aligns with several necromantic manifestations in great-grandfather's bestiary, though the unicorn targeting is unusual." "I'll need to check this out," Hagrid said grimly. "First thing tomorrow." As they walked back to the castle, Hagrid peppered Wednesday with questions about her family's communication with forests, creatures, and spirits. Her matter-of-fact answers about ancestral ghosts dropping by for tea and conversing with the mansion's resident entities gradually normalized the concept in Hagrid's mind until he was enthusiastically sharing his own experiences with misunderstood magical beings. "This has been most informative," Wednesday said as they reached Hagrid's hut. "Would you be amenable to future forest expeditions? There are several specimens I'd like to document for my personal research." "We'll see," Hagrid hedged, though his expression was considerably warmer than when they'd set out. "If yes, stick with me and follow instructions, might be educational." "Excellent. I'll prepare appropriate offerings for the Acromantula colony. Marie Antoinette has expressed interest in diplomatic relations." Hagrid looked torn between horror and delight at the prospect. "Let's not rush into anything with Aragog's family. They're a bit territorial." "As are all apex predators," Wednesday nodded understandingly. "I'll bring suitable tribute. Great Uncle Fester's pickled tentacles have proven effective with most carnivorous species." With that disturbing promise, they parted ways, Wednesday returning to the Slytherin dungeon to record her observations in a journal bound in what appeared to be leather but wasn't. Christmas morning arrived with the traditional excitement, though Wednesday observed the proceedings with her usual detached interest. She joined Harry and Ron in the Gryffindor common room, where they had invited her to participate in gift opening. "Happy Christmas." Harry greeted her, already wearing a hand-knitted sweater with an H on the front. "Culturally mandated seasonal felicitations to you as well," Wednesday replied, settling into an armchair with the precision of someone conducting a scientific observation. "That means Happy Christmas in Wednesday speak," Ron translated, tearing into another package. "Blimey, Mum made you one too." Indeed, a lumpy package addressed to Wednesday contained a black sweater with a silver W knitted on the front. "Your mother made this?" Wednesday examined the garment with something approaching genuine surprise. "Without having met me?" "Harry must have mentioned you in his letters," Ron shrugged. "Mum always makes sweaters for friends." Wednesday slipped the sweater over her black dress, the unexpected gift seeming to momentarily pierce her impassive facade. "Please convey my appreciation to your mother. The Addams family values handcrafted items, particularly those made with genuine sentiment." "Will do," Ron promised, already distracted by his pile of candy. Wednesday had brought small packages for both boys. Harry unwrapped his to find an unusual silver compass. "It points toward whatever you fear most," Wednesday explained. "Great-grandmother used it for therapeutic exposure purposes. The needle movement becomes more erratic as the fear source approaches." Thanks," Harry said, watching the needle swing wildly before settling in the direction of the dungeons. "That's thoughtful." Ron's gift was a set of chess pieces carved from what appeared to be bone. "Human phalanges," Wednesday confirmed when he asked tentatively. "From a 12th century monastery known for producing champion chess strategists. The residual competitive energy enhances tactical play." "These are actually brilliant," Ron admitted after getting over his initial horror, examining a knight that seemed to vibrate with barely contained aggression. "Creepy, but brilliant." "Function and aesthetic coherence need not be mutually exclusive," Wednesday replied, which Harry took as her version of, "You're welcome." She opened her own gifts next. Harry had given her a book titled Magic Most Evil, Historical Analysis, which he'd found in a forgotten corner of the library. "It's not actually dark magic," he hastened to explain. "Just a history of how different spells got classified that way. Thought you might find it interesting." A scholarly examination of arbitrary magical categorization, Wednesday nodded approvingly. "Most appropriate." From Ron, she received a box of every flavor beans with a note explaining he'd picked out all the normal flavors, leaving only the weird and disgusting ones. "You've identified my preference accurately," she acknowledged, selecting a gray bean with black speckles and eating it without hesitation. "Ah. Ash with hints of despair. Excellent." Hermione, despite being away for the holidays, had sent Wednesday a set of color-changing ink that shifted based on the writer's mood. "For your more expressive journal entries," the note read. Thoughtful, though unnecessary, Wednesday commented. I maintain consistent emotional equilibrium regardless of circumstance. As if to disprove this claim, her next gift genuinely surprised her. A small, unmarked package contained a delicate silver hairpin shaped like a raven in flight. That's nice, Harry observed. Who's it from? Wednesday examined the anonymous note that accompanied it, for cultural contributions to Hogwarts' educational experience. Traditions are the backbone of magical society, even the more stimulating ones. Professor Dumbledore, I believe, she said, an almost imperceptible softening in her expression. He appreciated the pixie release. Mental, the lot of you, Ron declared, though without malice. Their gift exchange was interrupted by the arrival of Fred and George Weasley, who had stayed at Hogwarts for the holidays and were sporting blue hair, apparently a lingering effect of the pixie incident. There she is. Fred, or possibly George, announced. The orchestrator of chaos herself. We come bearing gifts and propositions, added the other twin. We've been trying to achieve this level of school-wide mayhem for years, Fred explained admiringly. And you managed it with official approval. George finished. Dumbledore called it cultural education. The key is framing, Wednesday advised. Destructive chaos is vandalism. Anthropologically significant destructive chaos is educational enrichment. The twins exchanged delighted glances. We need to consult with you on future projects, Fred declared. A mind like yours combined with our practical expertise, would likely result in my expulsion, Wednesday interrupted. Professor Snape already finds my independent academic pursuits concerning. Adding your influence would exceed his tolerance threshold. Fair point, George conceded. But at least accept this token of our admiration. He presented her with a small box containing what appeared to be ordinary chocolate frogs. Modified to crawl up the consumer's nose before melting, Fred explained proudly. Still in testing phase, but promising results so far. Innovative, Wednesday acknowledged. Though the nasal cavity offers limited absorption surface compared to other mucous membranes. This observation led to a disturbingly technical conversation about optimal orifices for prank candy delivery that eventually drove Harry and Ron to seek refuge at breakfast, leaving Wednesday engaged in earnest consultation with the twins about the practical applications of Addams' family chemical knowledge to their product development. The Christmas feast that afternoon was spectacular, even by Hogwarts standards. The Great Hall had been restored to its pre-pixie glory, with additional enchantments that caused snow to fall from the ceiling but vanish before reaching the tables. Dumbledore wore a flowered bonnet from a wizard cracker and seemed in particularly high spirits, leading the room in several carols that Wednesday observed with anthropological interest but declined to join. The musical celebration of seasonal mythology serves important community bonding functions, she noted to Percy Weasley, who had made the mistake of asking why she wasn't singing along. Though the historical inaccuracy regarding reindeer flying capabilities is concerning. It's just a bit of fun, Percy replied stiffly. Fun often masks deeper sociological patterns, Wednesday countered. The Addams family Christmas tradition of blindfolded axe-throwing appears recreational but actually commemorates great-grandfather Slaughter's historical conflict with Bavarian wood spirits. Percy edged away after that, leaving Wednesday to enjoy her Christmas pudding in peace, occasionally feeding bits to Marie Antoinette, who had emerged from her pocket to investigate the festivities. After dinner, Harry pulled Wednesday aside. I need to show you something, he whispered. Something I found last night. His expression was troubled enough to pique her interest. A discovery of concerning proportions, judging by your elevated pulse and pupil dilation. I don't know what it is, exactly. But I think you might understand it better than me. That night, after the castle had grown quiet, Harry led Wednesday through deserted corridors under his invisibility cloak, another Christmas gift that she had examined with professional interest, noting its exceptional spectral displacement properties. They eventually reached an abandoned classroom containing a magnificent mirror in an ornate gold frame. Look, Harry whispered, positioning Wednesday in front of the mirror. She stared impassively at her reflection. It's a mirror. But don't you see them? Harry asked, confused. Other people, standing around you? I see only myself, Wednesday replied, studying the reflection carefully. Exactly as I am. Harry moved to stand beside her, his expression changing instantly. There they are. My parents and grandparents, and, he turned to Wednesday. You really don't see anything different? No. Wednesday examined the inscription carved around the top, Eris stra eru oit uber kafru oit anwosi. I show not your face but your heart's desire, she translated, reading backward. Interesting. Harry looked startled. You figured that out immediately. Great Aunt Deliria specialized in cryptographic mirror writing after her eyes were cursed to see everything in reverse. Wednesday stepped closer to the mirror. This appears to be a manifestation artifact. It shows the viewer what they most desire. That's why I see my family, Harry realized. But why don't you see anything different? Wednesday considered this. Perhaps because I am exactly as I wish to be. The Addams philosophy emphasizes self-acceptance without compromise. To desire to be different would contradict fundamental family values. You're completely happy with yourself? Harry sounded both impressed and slightly envious. No changes at all. Contentment with one's essence doesn't preclude improvement, Wednesday clarified. I desire to expand my knowledge of poisons, perfect my summoning techniques, and perhaps grow slightly taller to better reach laboratory equipment. But these are optimizations, not fundamental alterations. Harry looked back at the mirror, where his family smiled and waved at him. I've been coming here every night, he admitted. Just to see them. A concerning pattern, Wednesday observed. Desire reflection artifacts often incorporate addiction enchantments. The mirror shows an unattainable reality, creating dependency through false emotional fulfillment. You think it's dangerous? All powerful magical objects carry risk. Wednesday placed a pale hand on the mirror's surface. This one targets psychological vulnerabilities rather than causing direct harm. More insidious, in many ways. Harry reluctantly stepped away from the mirror. You're right. I shouldn't come back. A wise decision. Wednesday studied Harry's reflection again. Though the mirror has provided useful information. Your family bears strong resemblance to you, particularly your father. Your mother's eyes match yours precisely. You can see them when I look in it. When we stand together, yes. Your desire manifestation becomes partially visible to me. She tilted her head slightly. There's a woman in the back row with interesting bone structure. Very Addams-like cheekbones. Really? Harry looked back eagerly. Which one? Tall, severe expression, approximately 3 generations removed based on positioning. That might be my great-grandmother. Harry smiled sadly. I don't know anything about my extended family. Family is essential to identity formation, Wednesday said, with uncharacteristic gentleness. The Addams lineage provides both historical context and behavioral frameworks for each generation. I wish I had that, Harry admitted. You have traces of it within yourself, Wednesday observed. Genetic memory persists even when oral tradition is interrupted. Your instinctive broom skills, for instance, likely reflect inherited aptitude. This perspective seemed to comfort Harry slightly. As they prepared to leave, he took one last look at the mirror. I wonder why Dumbledore left this lying around if it's dangerous. Educational opportunity, Wednesday suggested. The most effective lessons incorporate genuine risk. That's a disturbing way to run a school. Yet consistent with Hogwarts' general approach to student safety, Wednesday pointed out. 3-headed dogs, forbidden forests, moving staircases without railings. Harry couldn't argue with this assessment as they made their way back to their respective dormitories under the invisibility cloak. The remainder of the Christmas holidays passed relatively peacefully, with only minor incidents including Wednesday's detention with Filch, during which she provided unsolicited advice on improving his manacle collection, an unauthorized experiment in the potions classroom that resulted in briefly sentient smoke, and what Ron described as the most terrifying chess tournament of my life, when Wednesday's bone pieces battled his enchanted ones with disturbing enthusiasm. The day before term resumed, Hermione returned, bursting with excitement about her holiday research. "I couldn't stop thinking about Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone," she explained as they gathered in the library. "So I convinced my parents to take me to a Muggle history museum with an alchemy exhibit." Productive initiative, Wednesday approved. Historical context often reveals overlooked details. Exactly. Hermione beamed. "And I found this." She pushed forward a note card on which she'd copied information about Flamel's alchemical achievements. "Flamel is credited with creating the only known Philosopher's Stone in existence," Harry read aloud. "It can transform any metal into gold and produce the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal." "Immortality has significant drawbacks," Wednesday commented. "Great-grandmother's partial immortality has resulted in awkward bureaucratic complications. The Romanian ministry still refuses to issue her a death certificate despite 3 confirmed expirations." Ron snorted. "Only you would find fault with living forever. Extending life unnaturally creates metaphysical imbalances," Wednesday explained. "Though the alchemical approach is more elegant than most longevity methods. No visible decay, unlike traditional revenant states." "The point is," Hermione interjected, "this confirms what the stone does and why someone would want to steal it." "Immortality and unlimited gold," Harry nodded. "Powerful motivations." "Indeed." Wednesday looked thoughtful. "Though the temporal investment required for alchemical transformation suggests patience inconsistent with Professor Snape's behavioral patterns. He favors immediate efficacy in his approaches." "You're still not convinced Snape's the one after the stone?" Harry asked incredulously. "I maintain that Professor Quirrell presents more consistent indicators of deception," Wednesday replied. "His apparent incompetence contrasts with his academic credentials, his stuttering pattern lacks the neurological markers of genuine speech impairment, and his turban emits a faint necrotic aura inconsistent with standard fabric enchantments." "Necrotic aura?" Hermione repeated skeptically. "That's not a recognized magical detection technique." "Not in standard curriculum," Wednesday agreed. "The Addams sensory perception includes awareness of death-adjacent magical signatures. Mother can identify a corpse's age of death within 3 hours simply by smell." "Useful at family reunions, is it?" Ron muttered. "Extremely. Cousin Lumpy has faked his death 17 times to avoid Great-Aunt Griselda's accordion recitals." Hermione steered the conversation back to the matter at hand. "Whether it's Snape or Quirrell, we know the stone is being protected by more than just Fluffy. Each teacher likely contributed a security measure. A logical defensive structure would incorporate diverse magical disciplines," Wednesday agreed. "Herbology, charms, transfiguration, potions, perhaps defense against the dark arts, though Professor Quirrell's contribution would presumably be surmountable by himself. So we need to figure out what those protections might be," Harry determined. "And how to get past them if necessary." "Why would we need to get past them?" Hermione asked, alarmed. "If the teachers can't be trusted to stop the thief," Harry explained. "If Dumbledore leaves Hogwarts for any reason, that would be the perfect time to steal the stone." "Preemptive intervention has merit," Wednesday acknowledged. "Though I suggest supplementing conventional magical counters with alternative approaches." "Alternative how?" Ron asked suspiciously. Wednesday removed a small black journal from her pocket. "The Addams family has developed specialized methods for bypassing magical barriers. Great-grandmother's personal grimoire includes several techniques specifically designed for artifact retrieval." "You're suggesting we use dark magic?" Hermione looked scandalized. "Not dark. Unconventional." Wednesday flipped through pages covered in spidery writing. This one, for instance, utilizes sympathetic connection principles rather than direct magical confrontation. By establishing resonance with the target object, physical barriers become largely irrelevant. That sounds like blood magic, Hermione protested. Blood is merely one potential conduit. Essential oils extracted during specific lunar phases can substitute with minimal efficacy loss. Wednesday closed the book. I've been preparing components since identifying the stone as the protected object. Several key ingredients required the winter solstice harvesting conditions. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged looks that combined concern with reluctant admiration. "You've been planning this all along?" Harry asked. "I prepare for contingencies," Wednesday corrected. The likelihood of requiring direct intervention remains moderate rather than certain, but preparedness eliminates last-minute improvisational errors. As they continued their research into potential protections around the stone, the dynamic between the four students solidified into an effective, if unusual, team. Hermione provided encyclopedic knowledge of standard magical approaches, Harry contributed intuitive problem-solving, Ron offered strategic thinking honed by chess, and Wednesday supplied perspectives that frequently horrified but undeniably expanded their tactical options. By the time the rest of the school returned from holidays, they had compiled extensive notes on probable security measures and potential countermethods, with Wednesday's contributions requiring a separate parchment labeled, "Emergency Alternatives, Approach with Caution." The resumption of classes brought a return to Wednesday's unique approach to education, which continued to both impress and disturb her professors in equal measure. In herbology, they began studying bouncing bulbs, with Professor Sprout demonstrating proper handling techniques to avoid being hit by the bouncing plants. "Gentle but firm grip, everyone," she instructed cheerfully. "Too tight and you'll bruise them, too loose and you'll get a nasty bump on the head." Wednesday, observing the bouncing pattern with scientific precision, approached her bulb differently. Instead of attempting to restrain it, she placed her hand flat on the table beside it and spoke several words in what sounded like Latin mixed with something older and harsher. To everyone's amazement, her bouncing bulb stopped moving entirely, settling docilely next to her hand like a trained pet. "Miss Addams!" Professor Sprout exclaimed. "What did you do to that bulb?" "Behavioral modification through frequency matching," Wednesday explained calmly. Plants respond to specific vibrational patterns that mimic their natural predators. Great-grandmother developed the technique for her more aggressive specimens. "That's not in the curriculum," Sprout pointed out, though she looked more intrigued than upset. "Standard restraint methods seemed inefficient," Wednesday replied. "This approach establishes dominance without physical intervention." "Well, it's certainly effective," Sprout admitted, watching as Wednesday's bulb remained perfectly still while those around it continued bouncing energetically. 5 points to Slytherin for innovative application, though I'd like you to practice the standard technique as well. "Of course," Wednesday agreed, before adding, "the submission vocalization also works on most carnivorous species, though man-eating shrubs require a minor blood offering to reinforce the hierarchy." Professor Sprout decided not to pursue this line of discussion further. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall had them attempting to turn beetles into buttons, a task most students found challenging. Wednesday completed the transformation almost immediately, but with a characteristic modification: her buttons retained tiny leg movements and mandible clicks when touched. "Miss Addams," McGonagall sighed after inspecting her work, "the objective is complete transformation, not partial animation retention." "I preserved the essential beetle consciousness within the button form," Wednesday explained. Complete consciousness erasure during transfiguration raises ethical questions about magical transformative consent. McGonagall blinked in surprise. "That's, actually a sophisticated philosophical position debated in advanced transfiguration ethics. However, at the first-year level, we focus on basic form transformation without such considerations." "Understandable, though potentially formative of problematic magical attitudes," Wednesday nodded. Great-grandmother's treatise on consciousness continuity during transmutation suggests early sensitivity to entity autonomy correlates with more responsible adult casting practices. "Perhaps you could share this treatise with me sometime," McGonagall suggested, looking genuinely interested despite herself. For now, please produce at least one completely inanimate button. As you wish, Wednesday agreed, performing the spell again to create a perfect black button with no discernible beetle traits. Though I did promise him a swift return to his original form. McGonagall wisely chose not to ask whether she was joking. Defense Against the Dark Arts provided perhaps the most dramatic example of Wednesday's educational impact when Professor Quirrell attempted to teach them the theory behind defensive wand movements. The proper emotion creates a magical barrier, he stammered, demonstrating a simple shield position. Who would like to practice W with me? To everyone's surprise, Wednesday raised her hand. Quirrell looked distinctly nervous as she approached the front of the classroom. I'll cast a simple J Jinx, he explained. You'll attempt the SH shield charm we've been practicing. Wednesday nodded, but instead of assuming the defensive position he'd demonstrated, she made a quick, sharp movement with her wand while murmuring something under her breath. When Quirrell cast his Jinx, a mild knockback Jinx that should have pushed her backward if not blocked, something entirely unexpected happened. The spell rebounded with triple its original force, sending Quirrell flying into the blackboard with a crash. More disturbingly, his turban partially unwound in the fall, revealing a glimpse of something underneath that made several students gasp before he hurriedly rewrapped it. Addams' countercurse, Wednesday explained to the stunned classroom as Quirrell struggled to his feet. Reflects hostile magic with compound interest. Great Uncle Fester developed it after the unfortunate duel that temporarily inverted his skeleton. That is not a first-year spell. Quirrell spluttered, his stutter seemingly worse than usual. Where did you learn such a thing? Family grimoire, Wednesday replied calmly. The basic principle is simple, magical energy can be redirected rather than absorbed or blocked. Though the amplification component requires proper intention focusing. Quirrell's eyes narrowed, his stutter momentarily forgotten. That's advanced magic theory. Perhaps in conventional education, Wednesday acknowledged. The Addams approach prioritizes practical survival techniques from an early age. I've been reflecting curses since I was 7. Something dark and calculating flashed in Quirrell's eyes before his nervous demeanor reasserted itself. That's quite enough demonstration for today. 5 points from Slytherin for unauthorized spell usage. And 10 points to Slytherin, came Dumbledore's voice from the doorway, where he stood watching with evident interest, for exceptional magical aptitude and theoretical understanding beyond your level. Quirrell looked as though he wanted to protest but thought better of it with Dumbledore present. Wednesday returned to her seat, apparently oblivious to the stir she'd caused, though Harry noticed her watching Quirrell with unusual intensity for the remainder of the class. Afterward, as they walked to lunch, she shared her observations. Professor Quirrell's turban conceals something. The magical signature I detected during the spell reflection was dual-natured. Dual-natured? Harry repeated. 2 magical sources in close proximity, one significantly darker than the other. Like a parasite and host relationship. Are you saying Quirrell has something living under his turban? Ron looked disgusted and fascinated simultaneously. Living is perhaps inaccurate. Existing would be more precise. Wednesday's expression grew thoughtful. The necrotic aura I previously detected was stronger during the magical interaction. Death adjacent but not fully deceased. That makes no sense, Hermione protested. A person can't be partially dead. Conventional magical theory suggests otherwise, Wednesday countered. Great-grandfather's research into soul fragmentation documented several methods for existence beyond bodily death, including parasitic attachment to living hosts. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty corridor. You think Quirrell is possessed? Possession implies complete control replacement. This appears more symbiotic, with distinct consciousness maintenance. Wednesday paused. The restricted Hogwarts library section likely contains relevant reference texts. Great-grandmother mentioned a particularly informative volume on soul magic that was banned in 17 countries. We are not breaking into the restricted section, Hermione declared firmly. Alternative research methods exist, Wednesday conceded. I've written to Mother requesting great-grandfather's notes on partial death states. Her response should arrive soon, assuming the Ministry mail screeners don't confiscate it again. This particular line of investigation was temporarily sidelined, however, by the approaching Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff, where Harry would be seeking again. The weather had turned bitterly cold, and rumors circulated that Snape would be refereeing the match, causing concern among Harry's supporters. He'll be completely biased. Ron complained during a study session in the library. You won't stand a chance, Harry. Sporting ethics typically preclude direct sabotage even with house affiliation bias, Wednesday noted, not looking up from her potions essay. Though strategic penalty assignment remains within referee discretion. Thanks for that encouraging thought, Harry muttered sarcastically. Wednesday tilted her head slightly. Would you prefer false reassurance over factual assessment? My understanding of friendship protocols indicates honesty takes precedence over emotional comfort. Sometimes a little false reassurance isn't the worst thing, Ron advised her. Especially before someone has to fly around with Snape trying to knock them off their broom. I don't believe Professor Snape attempted to jinx Harry's broom during the previous match, Wednesday stated, causing Harry and Ron to stare at her in disbelief. We saw him. Harry protested. Hermione set his robes on fire to break his eye contact, and my broom stopped trying to buck me off. Correlation doesn't prove causation, Wednesday countered. Professor Snape's positioning provided optimal sightline for counter-curse casting rather than jinx delivery. The uninterrupted eye contact pattern is consistent with protective magic, not offensive. Then who was jinxing my broom? I observed Professor Quirrell maintaining similar eye contact from the opposing section, Wednesday replied. When his concentration was broken by Hermione's fire distraction affecting multiple staff members, the jinx effect ceased. Harry looked stunned. You think Quirrell was trying to kill me? But he's afraid of his own shadow. Apparent cowardice provides excellent behavior camouflage, Wednesday pointed out. No one suspects the trembling professor of harboring malevolent intentions. But why would Quirrell want to hurt Harry? Ron asked. Wednesday's dark eyes fixed on Harry. Your historical significance makes you automatically relevant to anyone seeking the stone. You survived a killing curse from a powerful dark wizard. Such magical anomalies rarely occur without lasting consequences. Harry unconsciously touched his scar. You think there's a connection between Voldemort, me, and the stone? Possible, Wednesday acknowledged. Immortality objects would naturally interest those who previously lost physical form. If Professor Quirrell is indeed hosting a parasitic consciousness as I suspect, the connection becomes logical rather than coincidental. The disturbing implications of this theory hung in the air between them. Before they could discuss it further, Neville Longbottom hopped into the library, his legs locked together by what was obviously the leglocker curse. As Hermione performed the counter-curse and helped him into a chair, he explained tearfully that Malfoy had ambushed him. You should report him, Hermione urged. I don't want more trouble, Neville mumbled. Standing up to enemies requires practice, Wednesday observed dispassionately. The Addams family tradition recommends starting with minor vengeance before progressing to blood feuds. I'm not like you, Neville protested miserably. I'm not brave. Bravery is learnable, Wednesday replied. Great-Uncle Fester overcame his fear of guillotines through repeated exposure. Not helping, Wednesday, Harry murmured, before turning to Neville. You're worth 12 of Malfoy. The Sorting Hat put you in Gryffindor, didn't it? And where's Malfoy? In stinking Slytherin. Wednesday raised an eyebrow. House-based insults seem counterproductive given my presence. Present company accepted, Harry amended hastily. You know what I mean. Taxonomical generalizations are rarely accurate, Wednesday noted. But your supportive intention toward Neville is socially appropriate. Harry gave Neville his last chocolate frog, which seemed to cheer him slightly. As Neville unwrapped it, he handed the card to Harry. "Dumbledore again," Harry said, glancing at it. "I've got about 6 of him." He stopped suddenly, staring at the card. "I've found him. Nicholas Flamel. Listen to this. Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. I told you I'd seen the name somewhere." Ron exclaimed. "We already established the Flamel connection," Wednesday pointed out. "Though confirmation is academically satisfying. The point is," Harry continued excitedly, "this proves we're right about the stone. It's got to be what Fluffy's guarding. And what Quirrell, or whoever, is trying to steal," Hermione added. Wednesday closed her book with unusual decisiveness. "This validation necessitates enhanced security monitoring. I'll accelerate my preparation of alternative access methods in case direct intervention becomes necessary." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Hermione cautioned. "We should watch and gather more evidence before doing anything drastic." "Preparedness eliminates panic-induced errors," Wednesday countered. "The full moon next week provides optimal harvesting conditions for several key components." "For what exactly?" Ron asked suspiciously. "An Addams family speciality," Wednesday replied. "Great-grandmother calls it the path between worlds. A method for bypassing physical barriers through temporary phase shifting." "That sounds dangerous," Hermione said worriedly. "Only if performed incorrectly," Wednesday assured her. "The fatality rate under proper conditions is minimal." "Define minimal," Harry requested with a grimace. "Below 30% for non-family members," Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. "Though I've been modifying the formula to accommodate non-Addams physiological limitations." Ron looked horrified. "I think I'll take my chances with whatever's through the trapdoor, thanks." "Your choice." The screaming is reportedly quite intense during the transition phase. The conversation ended there, with Hermione hurriedly changing the subject to Quidditch strategies, though Harry noticed she took Wednesday aside later and engaged in what appeared to be a serious discussion about ethical boundaries in experimental magic. The day of the Quidditch match arrived with clear skies but bitter cold. Wednesday joined Ron, Hermione, and Neville in the stands, carrying what appeared to be a pair of ornate silver opera glasses. "Great Aunt Ophelia's spectral enhancers," she explained when Hermione inquired. "They reveal magical emanations during casting. If someone attempts to interfere with Harry's broom again, I'll identify the source precisely." "Brilliant!" Ron exclaimed. "Can I have a look?" "They cause temporary retinal bleeding in non-Addams users," Wednesday informed him apologetically. "Though the resulting visual patterns are apparently quite beautiful during the recovery phase." "I'll pass," Ron decided quickly. As the teams walked onto the field, they noticed Dumbledore in the stands. "Snape won't try anything with Dumbledore watching," Hermione whispered, relieved. "Unless Professor Snape isn't the threat," Wednesday pointed out, adjusting her spectral enhancers to focus on the teacher's box, where both Snape and Quirrell sat with noticeable distance between them. The match began, with Snape immediately awarding Hufflepuff a penalty because George Weasley hit a bludger at him. Wednesday observed the proceedings with analytical interest, occasionally making notes in a small black journal. "Competitive sporting events reveal interesting psychological patterns," she commented. "The socially sanctioned violence has ritual significance similar to certain Addams family traditions, though with disappointingly few serious injuries." "Just enjoy the game," Ron suggested, wincing as she documented what appeared to be optimal bludger trajectory for cervical spine impact. The match progressed quickly, with Harry suddenly going into a spectacular dive that had the crowd on its feet. He streaked past Snape, missing him by inches, and then pulled out of the dive with the snitch clasped in his hand. The shortest Quidditch match in Hogwarts history. Ron cheered as they rushed onto the field to congratulate Harry. Wednesday, however, remained focused on her spectral observations. "Interesting," she murmured, watching the teacher's box through her enhancers. Professor Quirrell's magical signature showed unusual fluctuation patterns during Harry's dive. Almost like two conflicting intentions. But her analysis went unheard amid the celebration. Later, as Harry was putting his broomstick away, he spotted Snape heading into the Forbidden Forest and decided to follow on his broom. When he returned to the castle, he immediately sought out Ron, Hermione, and Wednesday in the library. "Snape is trying to force Quirrell to help him get the stone," he reported breathlessly, recounting the conversation he'd overheard about your little bit of hocus-pocus and Quirrell's resistance. "This aligns with dual-actor theory," Wednesday nodded. "Though your interpretation may reverse the actual dynamic." "What do you mean?" Harry demanded. "Consider the alternative hypothesis. Professor Quirrell is the primary actor seeking the stone, using his apparent weakness to manipulate others, while Professor Snape suspects him and is attempting to prevent access." Wednesday tapped her quill thoughtfully against her parchment. "The conversation remains consistent with either interpretation." "But Snape's evil," Ron protested. "Everyone knows that." "Behavioral severity doesn't equate to moral alignment," Wednesday countered. "My family is considered evil by conventional standards, yet we've opposed genuinely malevolent forces for generations. Great-grandfather's memoirs detail his personal execution of 3 dark wizards who threatened the family graveyard." Harry looked torn. "But I saw Snape threatening Quirrell." "Intimidation tactics would be employed regardless of underlying motivation," Wednesday pointed out. "Either to force assistance in theft or to prevent it." "Either way," Hermione interjected practically, "as long as Quirrell stands up to Snape, or the other way around, if Wednesday's right, the stone is safe." "But for how long?" Harry worried. "Quirrell's terrified of Snape. He'll crack eventually." "Then we prepare for direct intervention," Wednesday stated. "My alternative access method will be ready after the next full moon. I require only 3 more components." "What components?" Hermione asked suspiciously. "Seasonally appropriate botanical specimens," Wednesday replied vaguely. "Hagrid has been most helpful in identifying forest locations." Indeed, Wednesday had been spending increasing time with Hagrid, ostensibly helping with various gamekeeper duties but actually collecting rare ingredients from the forest edge under his supervision. Their unusual friendship had flourished over their shared interest in creatures others found disturbing, and Hagrid had gradually granted her limited access to increasingly interesting forest specimens. "Found another injured unicorn yesterday," Hagrid confided during one such expedition. "Same as before, wounded and drained of blood. Whatever's hunting them is getting bolder." "Unicorn blood consumption indicates desperation," Wednesday observed, carefully harvesting silverleaf flowers that grew only in moonlight. "The life extension properties come with significant metaphysical cost." "You know about that?" Hagrid looked surprised. "Great-grandfather's research included comprehensive analysis of life-prolonging substances," Wednesday explained. "Unicorn blood offers temporary physical sustenance but induces progressive spiritual corruption. Only those already fundamentally compromised would accept such consequences." "Exactly." Hagrid nodded vigorously. "Dumbledore says the same. Whatever's out there must be close to death to risk such a curse." "Or between death states," Wednesday suggested. "Partial manifestation would create sustainable need for life force supplementation." This observation remained with her as they continued their preparations, adding another piece to the puzzle regarding Quirrell's possible condition. If he was indeed hosting a parasitic entity, unicorn blood would provide necessary sustenance while the host pursued a permanent solution like the Philosopher's Stone. As exams approached, Hermione began creating study schedules for all of them, including Wednesday, who accepted the color-coded charts with polite bemusement. Academic evaluation preparation appears disproportionately stressful for non-Addams students, she observed as Hermione frantically reviewed astronomy charts. The family educational philosophy emphasizes practical knowledge application over theoretical regurgitation. "Some of us care about our grades," Hermione replied tersely. "Knowledge retention serves survival purposes," Wednesday acknowledged. Though I question the evolutionary advantage of the human stress response to artificial testing conditions. Despite her apparent nonchalance, Wednesday's own preparation was methodical and thorough. Her notes for each subject were immaculate, organized according to an arcane system involving color-coded symbols and what appeared to be alchemical notations. "Your study method is actually quite brilliant," Hermione admitted, examining Wednesday's potions compilation. This cross-referencing system links ingredient properties across different applications. "Great-grandmother's technique," Wednesday explained. She categorized poisons by symptomatic overlap rather than botanical origin. The pattern recognition enhances retention while identifying novel combination possibilities. "Could you show me how to adapt it for transfiguration?" Thus began an unexpected collaboration, with Wednesday helping Hermione develop advanced organization systems while Hermione helped Wednesday understand the importance of adhering to curriculum expectations in exam responses. "Professor McGonagall will want the standard transfiguration theory," Hermione emphasized. "Even if your great-grandmother's consciousness retention approach is more ethically sophisticated." "Intellectual conformity for strategic advancement," Wednesday nodded. "The Addams family has employed similar tactics when necessary. Great-Uncle Fester once pretended normalcy for 3 weeks to infiltrate a Muggle electric company. The resulting power grid modifications still cause unexplained phenomena in northern Romania." As they studied, Harry's scar began troubling him with increasing frequency, particularly when Quirrell was nearby. After a particularly painful episode following a defense against the dark arts class, he shared his concern. "It's getting worse," he confided to his friends. "I think it means danger's coming." Curse scars often function as warning systems, Wednesday noted with clinical interest. The magical residue creates neural pathway modifications sensitive to related magical signatures. "You think my scar can detect Voldemort somehow?" Harry asked, rubbing his forehead. "Magical injuries caused by direct contact with powerful dark wizards typically retain connective properties," Wednesday confirmed. Great-grandfather's left arm could predict thunderstorms after his duel with Grendash the Malevolent. The severed limb continued forecasting weather for decades afterward. "Your family really needs to write different kinds of books," Ron muttered. "The Addams Chronicles have historical significance," Wednesday replied seriously. "Though the ministry classification as forbidden knowledge, Class X limits their academic accessibility." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an official-looking owl bearing a ministry-sealed letter for Wednesday. She opened it without expression, reading the contents quickly. "Interesting," she commented. "The Department for Regulation of Magical Artifacts has impounded Mother's package. Apparently great-grandfather's research on soul fragmentation raised significant security concerns during routine mail screening." "They can do that?" Hermione asked, shocked. "The ministry maintains broad discretionary powers regarding information classification," Wednesday confirmed. "Though Mother has initiated appropriate appeals through the family solicitor, who specializes in forbidden knowledge litigation. So we won't get that information about whatever might be under Quirrell's turban," Harry concluded, disappointed. "Not through official channels," Wednesday agreed. "However, the detention of the physical materials doesn't prevent Mother from sharing the relevant content through alternative means." That evening, Wednesday was called to Professor Snape's office, where he presented her with a sealed black envelope. "This arrived for you through unconventional delivery methods," he stated, his expression unreadable. Apparently a raven deposited it directly on the headmaster's desk, bypassing standard mail wards. "Professor Dumbledore asked me to convey it, given my position as your head of house." "Thank you, Professor." Wednesday accepted the envelope, which emitted a faint humming sound. "Mother can be persistent regarding family correspondence." "Indeed." Snape's dark eyes studied her carefully. "Miss Addams, while Hogwarts respects cultural diversity in student backgrounds, certain types of family knowledge are considered inappropriate for the school environment." "Of course," Wednesday agreed smoothly. "The distinction between educational research and practical application remains clear." See that it does, Snape warned. Your academic performance has been exceptional, if occasionally disturbing. It would be unfortunate if extracurricular interests compromised your educational opportunities. I understand completely, Professor. Wednesday tucked the envelope into her pocket. Knowledge itself remains neutral. Its application determines its classification. Something like reluctant approval flickered in Snape's expression. A surprisingly sophisticated perspective for a first year. 5 points to Slytherin for philosophical acuity. Wednesday shared the contents of her mother's letter with Harry, Ron, and Hermione that night, having selected an unused classroom warded with privacy charms she described as family standard, with minor modifications to prevent eavesdropping, scrying, and spiritual surveillance. Mother confirmed my suspicions, she explained, unfolding pages covered in elegant, spidery handwriting. Great-grandfather documented 7 known methods for achieving partial immortality through soul manipulation. The most relevant to our situation is parasitic attachment following incomplete physical destruction. In English, Ron requested. When a wizard is destroyed but not completely killed, the soul fragment can attach to another living being. Wednesday's dark eyes fixed on Harry. The connection to your scar is significant. If your pain increases in Quirrell's presence, it suggests proximity detection to the original curse caster. Harry's face paled. You think Voldemort is inside Quirrell somehow? Parasitic consciousness integration would explain the dual magical signature I've detected, Wednesday confirmed. It also aligns with the unicorn blood consumption Hagrid observed. A disembodied entity would require life force supplementation while seeking permanent restoration. The Philosopher's Stone, Hermione whispered. He wants it to get his body back. The elixir of life would provide sustainable physical regeneration without the corrupting effects of unicorn blood, Wednesday agreed. A logical objective for an entity in compromised manifestation state. The implications of this theory hung heavy in the air. We have to tell Dumbledore, Harry decided. With what evidence? Hermione asked practically. Magical signatures only Wednesday can see. Harry's scar hurting. They'll think we're making it up. The unicorn killings provide physical corroboration, Wednesday pointed out. Though establishing the connection to Professor Quirrell would require evidence of his forest access corresponding to attack timing. Which we don't have, Ron concluded glumly. Not yet, Wednesday corrected. But observation patterns could be established. The full moon is in 3 days. Unicorns are most visible during peak lunar illumination, making them vulnerable targets. You're not suggesting we go into the Forbidden Forest at night to catch Quirrell attacking unicorns? Hermione looked horrified. Direct intervention would be tactically unsound, Wednesday acknowledged. However, a surveillance position at the forest edge with Great Aunt Ophelia's spectral enhancers would provide documentary evidence without unnecessary risk exposure. We should try to see Dumbledore first, Harry insisted. Even without proof, he might listen. Their decision to approach Dumbledore faced an immediate setback the next morning when they learned he had been called to the Ministry of Magic on urgent business. He's gone. Harry asked Professor McGonagall desperately. Now. But it's important. More important than the Ministry of Magic, Potter, she replied skeptically. It's about the Philosopher's Stone, Harry blurted out. McGonagall's books tumbled from her arms in shock. After recovering her composure, she assured them the stone was perfectly well protected and sent them on their way with a stern warning about minding their own business. It's happening tonight, Harry declared as soon as they were alone. Quirrell's going after the stone while Dumbledore's away. The timing alignment suggests premeditation, Wednesday agreed. The sudden ministry emergency may be manufactured distraction. So what do we do? Ron asked nervously. We go through the trapdoor tonight, Harry decided. Before Quirrell gets the stone or Voldemort comes back. That's incredibly dangerous, Hermione protested. Which is why we'll utilize my alternative access method, Wednesday interjected. The preparation is complete as of last night's final component harvesting. Your path between worlds thing. Ron looked skeptical. The one with the screaming and 30% fatality rate. I've modified the formula, Wednesday assured him. The theoretical fatality risk is now below 15%, assuming proper application and sufficient mental fortitude. That's still 1 in 7 chance of dying. Hermione exclaimed. Significantly better odds than confronting a fully restored Dark Lord, Wednesday countered logically. Besides, the fatalities in great-grandmother's notes were primarily due to psychological breakdown during the transition phase. If you maintain conceptual cohesion, physical dissolution remains temporary. Physical dissolution. Ron squeaked. Perhaps we should attempt the conventional route first, Hermione suggested hastily. And keep Wednesday's method as a backup? Harry nodded. We'll use the invisibility cloak to get to the third-floor corridor. If we can't get past Fluffy or the other protections, then we can consider alternative methods. Tactical flexibility optimizes success probability, Wednesday agreed. I'll bring the necessary components regardless. The mixture remains viable for approximately 6 hours after final activation. That evening, they met in an empty classroom to finalize their plans. Wednesday arrived carrying a small black bag that emitted occasional wisps of silvery smoke. The path is prepared, she announced, setting the bag carefully on a desk. Final activation requires only the addition of blood from each participant. A few drops will suffice. Let's save the blood rituals for emergency situations, Harry suggested firmly. Here's the plan, we go to the third-floor corridor under the invisibility cloak. I'll use the flute Hagrid gave me for Christmas to put Fluffy to sleep, like Wednesday did with her bone flute that first time. The musical soporific effect should function regardless of the instrument, Wednesday confirmed. Though bone conducts the sound frequencies more efficiently. Once we're past Fluffy, we deal with whatever other protections are in place, Harry continued. If we get stuck, then we consider Wednesday's alternative. They waited until the castle had grown quiet before setting out under Harry's invisibility cloak, which barely covered all 4 of them. As they navigated the corridors, they narrowly avoided both Filch and Peeves before reaching their destination. The door to Fluffy's chamber was already ajar. Quirrell's been here, Harry whispered. He's already gotten past Fluffy. The temporal advantage is concerning, Wednesday observed. Though multiple security layers should delay complete objective achievement. Harry handed the invisibility cloak to Hermione for safekeeping, then put Hagrid's flute to his lips and began to play a formless tune. The massive 3-headed dog's eyes began to droop immediately, and within moments it was fast asleep. Efficient, Wednesday approved as they approached the trapdoor. Though your technique lacks the harmonic resonance that optimizes duration. We should proceed quickly. Ron pulled open the trapdoor, revealing a dark drop with no visible bottom. I'll go first, Harry decided, handing the still-playing flute to Hermione. If anything happens to me, get out and go to McGonagall. He lowered himself through the opening and let go. After a soft, muffled thump, his voice called up, "It's okay. It's a soft landing." Ron followed, then Wednesday, with Hermione coming last. They found themselves sitting on what felt like a plant, its snake-like tendrils already beginning to twist around their ankles. Devil's Snare. Hermione identified immediately. We need to relax or it'll kill us faster. An accurate assessment, Wednesday commented, remaining perfectly still as the plant began wrapping around her. Though death by Devil's Snare is relatively peaceful compared to most botanical consumption methods. The constriction causes unconsciousness before the digestive enzymes activate. Not helping. Ron shouted, struggling frantically against the tightening vines. Hermione managed to free herself by relaxing and slipping through to a stone passageway below. Harry followed her example, but Ron was panicking too much to comply. We need fire. Hermione called up. But there's no wood. Have you lost your mind? Ron gasped as the plant tightened around his chest. Are you a witch or not? Hermione quickly cast a spell sending blue flames at the plant, which immediately released Ron. Surprisingly, Wednesday was already standing below with them, despite having made no obvious effort to escape. How did you get free? Harry asked. Devil's Snare responds to familiar magical signatures, she explained. Great Aunt Dementia maintains a similar specimen in the family conservatory. I've been handling them since childhood. It recognized me as kin rather than prey. The plants in your house recognize you? Ron looked disturbed. Most of our botanical collection has developed rudimentary sentience through prolonged exposure to family magic, Wednesday confirmed as they proceeded down the stone passageway. The Venus flytrap by the front door has learned to distinguish between welcome guests and door-to-door salespeople. The latter rarely leave intact. The next chamber contained hundreds of flying keys and broomsticks. After identifying the correct key and successfully catching it, with Harry's seeker skills proving crucial, they proceeded to a giant wizard's chessboard where they had to play their way across. Fascinating parallel to traditional wizards' duels, Wednesday observed as Ron directed them as chess pieces. Great-grandfather's memoirs described similar combat simulations used in 17th-century magical trials. Ron's strategic brilliance led them to victory, though at the cost of his own sacrifice. As the White Queen smashed him to the floor, Wednesday tilted her head with clinical interest. The animation charm incorporates actual impact mechanics rather than mere symbolic representation, she noted. Elegant design for a security measure. Painful but non-lethal. Is he okay? Harry asked anxiously after they'd won the game. Wednesday knelt beside Ron's unconscious form, checking his pulse with practiced precision. Concussion, possibly mild cranial fracture, but stable vital signs. The magical chess pieces are calibrated to incapacitate rather than kill. He'll recover with appropriate medical intervention. They left Ron behind as they continued to the next chamber, which contained a knocked-out troll, Quirrell's specialty, Harry noted grimly, and then to a room with 7 differently shaped bottles standing on a table. As they entered, purple flames sprang up behind them and black flames ahead. Hermione solved Snape's logical riddle quickly, identifying the smallest bottle as the one that would allow them through the black flames toward the stone. There's only enough for one person, she observed, examining the tiny bottle. Logical progression suggests individual confrontation as the final trial, Wednesday noted. Harry should proceed. Me? Harry looked surprised. Your connection to the situation is most direct, Wednesday explained. Both historically and magically. The scar creates relevant linkage that may prove tactically significant. Wednesday's right, Hermione agreed reluctantly. It should be you, Harry. I'll take the other potion to go back and help Ron. We'll get brooms from the flying key room to get out and send an owl to Dumbledore. Or utilize my alternative, Wednesday suggested, opening her black bag. The silvery substance inside glowed eerily. With Ron incapacitated, our exit strategy requires modification. The path between worlds can transport us directly to the hospital wing, bypassing all previous chambers. Hermione looked torn between conventional magic and Wednesday's mysterious alternative. Go to Ron, Harry decided. Use the potion to get back, then use Wednesday's, whatever it is, if you need to. I'll go forward. Before taking the potion that would allow him through the black flames, Harry turned to Wednesday. Any last advice? She regarded him solemnly. If you encounter the parasite consciousness directly, avoid eye contact. Soul fragments often retain legilimency capabilities from their original form. I have no idea what that means, Harry admitted. Mental intrusion through eye contact, Wednesday clarified. The family defense technique involves visualizing a wall of shadows, but without proper training, simply avoiding direct visual connection is more efficient. Harry nodded, then swallowed the contents of the small bottle and stepped through the black flames. Left alone, Wednesday turned to Hermione with uncharacteristic directness. We should prepare the path now. Harry will likely need immediate extraction once he confronts what's waiting. Let's get Ron first, Hermione insisted. They returned to the chess room, where Ron was beginning to stir groggily. Wednesday examined him with clinical efficiency. Mild concussion as predicted, she diagnosed. Cognitive function appears intact, though coordination will be compromised. Fine, Ron mumbled unconvincingly, attempting to sit up. The path is our optimal exit strategy, Wednesday decided, removing the small black cauldron from her bag. The silvery liquid inside pulsed with an internal light. It requires 3 drops of blood from each participant to establish physical resonance. Blood magic? Hermione protested weakly. That's got to be illegal. The technical classification is sympathetic transference using biological anchoring, Wednesday corrected, producing a small silver needle. The Ministry categorization as blood magic is politically motivated rather than technically accurate. Whatever it is, will it get us out of here quickly? Ron asked, holding his head. Almost instantaneously, Wednesday confirmed. Though the transition experience is reportedly disorienting for first-time users. With Ron's condition deteriorating and concern for Harry growing, Hermione reluctantly agreed. Wednesday efficiently collected 3 drops of blood from each of them, adding them to the silvery mixture, which immediately began to swirl with purpose. The activation requires clear visualization of our destination, she instructed, holding the cauldron between them. Focus on the hospital wing. The conceptual unity strengthens the spatial bridging. And then what? Hermione asked nervously. We drink it, Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. A small sip each. The physical dissolution begins approximately 7 seconds after consumption. Physical what? Ron squeaked. The body temporarily converts to non-corporeal essence, Wednesday explained patiently. The sensation is reportedly similar to being turned inside out while falling through a tornado made of ice. Great Uncle Fester describes it as exhilarating. Of course he does, Hermione muttered. We should leave enough for Harry, Wednesday continued, measuring the mixture carefully into 3 small vials. I'll return for him once you're safely transferred. You can't go back alone. Hermione protested. The Addams tolerance for metaphysical transition stress exceeds normal parameters, Wednesday replied calmly. Multiple crossings within a short time frame are manageable for me but potentially harmful for non-family members. With no better options, they each took their vials. Wednesday instructed them to drink on her count, focus on the hospital wing, and maintain conceptual self-integrity regardless of apparent physical dissolution. The experience that followed was exactly as disturbing as Wednesday had implied. The moment the liquid touched their lips, the chamber around them began to waver, then dissolve into swirling silver mist. Hermione felt an icy sensation spreading through her body, followed by the terrifying feeling that her physical form was unraveling thread by thread. A distant scream that might have been Ron's, or possibly her own, echoed as they seemed to fall through endless cold darkness. Throughout it all, Wednesday's voice remained calm, repeating, maintain focus. Conceptualize the destination. Physical reconstitution follows intent mapping. The experience lasted both an eternity and an instant before they suddenly materialized in the hospital wing, causing Madame Pomfrey to drop an entire tray of potions with a resounding crash. What in Merlin's name, she gasped, staring at the 3 students who had literally appeared out of thin air in the middle of her ward. Interchamber transportation via modified Addams methodology, Wednesday explained calmly, seemingly unaffected by the journey that had left Hermione shaking and Ron retching weakly. Ron requires treatment for concussion and possible cranial fracture. Hermione is experiencing standard transition shock. I need to retrieve Harry from the final chamber immediately. Before the astonished nurse could respond, Wednesday had swallowed the remaining potion and vanished in a swirl of silver mist, leaving Hermione to attempt an explanation that grew increasingly incoherent as the after-effects of the transportation method took hold. Addams, Madame Pomfrey muttered, helping Ron onto a bed. I should have known. That family has been sending me patients with impossible conditions for generations. In the final chamber, Harry stood face to face with Quirrell, who had indeed been working for Voldemort all along, and worse, had the Dark Lord's face protruding from the back of his head. Their confrontation over the Mirror of Erist had reached its climax, with Harry somehow finding the stone in his pocket and Quirrell/Voldemort advancing on him with murderous intent. When Quirrell's hands caused him unbearable pain upon contact, Harry instinctively grabbed his attacker's face, causing the professor's skin to blister and crack. In the midst of this struggle, a swirl of silver mist materialized in the corner of the chamber, solidifying into Wednesday's familiar form. She observed the situation with characteristic clinical detachment for approximately 3 seconds before drawing her wand and approaching the writhing figures on the ground. "Fascinating defense mechanism," she commented, noting how Quirrell's flesh burned at Harry's touch. "The sacrificial protection has created a contact-activated countercurse." Voldemort's face spotted her and shrieked in rage, "Kill them both." Wednesday tilted her head, studying the parasitic face with undisguised interest. Multiple consciousness manifestation with shared physical form. Great-grandfather's research confirmed. As Quirrell lunged toward her, she sidestepped with balletic precision, simultaneously pulling a small vial from her pocket and flinging its contents into the face on the back of his head. The liquid made contact with Voldemort's features and immediately began to sizzle. "Distilled essence of unicorn tears, freely given," she explained conversationally as Voldemort howled in agony. "The antithetical magical signature to forcibly taken unicorn blood." Great-grandmother documented the negation effect in her research on magical opposites. Taking advantage of the distraction, Harry grabbed Quirrell's arms with renewed determination, causing the professor's skin to crack and crumble beneath his touch. The pain in Harry's scar intensified to unbearable levels as Voldemort screamed in both rage and agony. Wednesday approached Harry, who was barely conscious, and poured the last drops of her silver potion into his mouth. "Conceptualize the hospital wing," she instructed calmly as the chamber around them began to dissolve. "The transition is unpleasant but brief." Harry, barely understanding what was happening, felt his body turning to mist just as Quirrell's form crumbled completely and a shadowy wraith tore itself from the disintegrating body with a final, terrible scream. The last thing Harry saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Wednesday's calm face watching the wraith flee through the chamber wall, her expression one of scientific fascination rather than fear. "Soul fragment independent mobility confirmed," she murmured, making a mental note to update great-grandfather's research as the silver mist enveloped them completely. Harry awoke in the hospital wing 3 days later to find Dumbledore sitting beside his bed. After explaining how love had protected Harry from Quirrell's touch, the headmaster expressed particular interest in Wednesday's unconventional extraction method. "Most remarkable," he commented, eyes twinkling. "Miss Addams appears to have adapted a transportation technique that hasn't been seen in Wizarding Britain for nearly 3 centuries. The Department of Mysteries has been most interested in her methodology." "Is she in trouble?" Harry asked anxiously. "She was only trying to help us escape." No, Dumbledore assured him. "I've explained that cultural magical traditions deserve respect and accommodation. Though I believe her parents received a rather sternly worded letter about appropriate school supplies for 11-year-olds. Harry grinned weakly. "I bet that won't change anything." "Indeed not," Dumbledore chuckled. "The Addams family has maintained their unique approach to magic for generations, often to the Ministry's consternation. Fortunately, their contributions to magical knowledge typically outweigh the occasional disruption." After Dumbledore departed, Harry received visits from Ron and Hermione, who had recovered from their adventure with minimal lasting effects. They brought news that the whole school was talking about their confrontation with Quirrell and, even more so, about Wednesday's mysterious rescue method. "She's become a legend in Slytherin," Ron reported. "Even Malfoy seems impressed, though he pretends not to be. Keeps asking if it's true she used ancient blood magic to teleport through Hogwarts wards. The Ministry sent 2 unspeakables to interview her," Hermione added. She described the theoretical principles of her transportation method so technically that they left looking confused and muttering about interdepartmental consultations. "Where is she now?" Harry asked. "Greenhouse 3, Ron answered. "Apparently she's been helping Professor Sprout with some project about magical plant sentience. Sprout looks terrified but fascinated every time Wednesday shows up." Wednesday finally visited Harry the evening before the end-of-year feast, arriving with her usual silent grace and placing a small black box on his bedside table. "A recovery gift," she explained. "Traditional in Addams culture after near-death experiences." Harry opened the box cautiously to find what appeared to be a tiny silver skeleton that moved with clockwork precision when touched. "A memento mori pocket companion," Wednesday elaborated. "It attunes to your personal magical signature over time and provides subtle warning vibrations when danger approaches. Great Uncle Fester saved him from assassination 7 times, though he occasionally ignores it for entertainment value." "That's thoughtful," Harry decided, watching the tiny skeleton perform a perfect backflip in his palm. "Thank you for saving me down there. Your potion thing was horrible but effective." "The path between worlds requires refinement for non-Addams users," Wednesday acknowledged. "I've documented the physiological responses for future modification." Hermione's transition sickness provided particularly useful data points. "I'm sure she was thrilled to be a research subject," Harry said dryly. "Her commitment to knowledge expansion overrode her discomfort," Wednesday replied. "Though she's requested advance warning before any future experimental magical transportation." Harry laughed, then grew serious. "Did you see what happened to Quirrell? And, the thing on the back of his head?" "Parasitic consciousness manifestation with partial physical integration," Wednesday nodded. "Exactly as great-grandfather's research suggested. The soul fragment maintained mobility even after host destruction, confirming independent sentience retention." "You mean Voldemort got away?" "In vaporous form, yes." Wednesday tilted her head slightly. "Though the unicorn tear essence I applied should have significantly weakened his magical cohesion. The restoration attempt will require substantial recovery time." "You planned for that possibility all along, didn't you?" Harry realized. "That's why you collected those tears from Hagrid's injured unicorn." "Preparedness eliminates improvisation requirements," Wednesday confirmed. "The magical opposition principle suggested unicorn-derived components would create optimal countermeasures. The freely given tears provided the necessary antithetical energy to forcibly take in blood." Harry shook his head in amazement. "You're scary brilliant, you know that." "Thank you," Wednesday replied, taking it as the compliment it was intended to be. "The family encourages analytical problem-solving from an early age. Survival often depends on it, particularly during Great Uncle Fester's experimental phases." When Harry was finally released from the hospital wing, he joined the school for the end-of-year feast. The Great Hall was decorated in Slytherin colors to celebrate their 7th consecutive House Cup victory, though Dumbledore had some last-minute points to award. First, to Mr. Ronald Weasley, "For the best-played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years, I award Gryffindor 50 points." Ron turned purple with embarrassment as his brothers clapped him on the back. Second, to Miss Hermione Granger, "For the use of cool logic in the face of fire, I award Gryffindor 50 points." Hermione buried her face in her arms as the Gryffindor table erupted in cheers. Third, to Mr. Harry Potter, "For pure nerve and outstanding courage, I award Gryffindor 60 points." The uproar was deafening as Gryffindor pulled equal with Slytherin in the house standings. Dumbledore raised his hand for silence. "There are all kinds of courage. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom." The Great Hall exploded with celebration as Gryffindor edged into first place. Harry, amid the chaos, glanced over at the Slytherin table. While most faces showed disappointment or outright anger, Wednesday observed the proceedings with her usual impassive expression, seemingly unbothered by her house's last-minute defeat. But Dumbledore wasn't finished. Finally, he called over the noise, which gradually subsided. Exceptional circumstances call for exceptional recognition. For outstanding intercultural magical innovation, unique problem-solving methodology, and remarkable composure in crisis situations, I award 50 points to Miss Wednesday Addams. A confused silence fell as students calculated the new standings. With Slytherin now just 40 points behind Gryffindor, the victory remained with the Lions, but the substantial recognition of Wednesday's contributions created an unprecedented moment of cross-house appreciation. After a moment's hesitation, both the Gryffindor and Slytherin tables broke into applause, the former out of genuine gratitude for her role in their adventure, the latter out of house pride and newfound respect for their most unusual member. Wednesday accepted the recognition with a slight nod, though Harry thought he detected the faintest ghost of a smile at the corners of her mouth. Later, as they prepared to board the Hogwarts Express for the journey home, Wednesday approached Harry, Ron, and Hermione on the platform. "I've been corresponding with Mother about our encounter with the parasitic consciousness," she informed them. "The family archives contain additional information on soul fragmentation that may prove relevant to future confrontations." "You think we'll face Voldemort again?" Hermione asked nervously. "Entities with interrupted mortality typically demonstrate persistence regarding unfinished objectives," Wednesday replied. "Great-grandfather encountered the same vengeful spirit 17 times before identifying its permanent banishment requirements." "That's not comforting," Ron muttered. "Preparedness mitigates vulnerability," Wednesday countered. "I'll continue researching over the summer. Mother has granted me access to the restricted family vault containing great-grandfather's more controversial journals." "Will we see you next term?" Harry asked. "Assuming the ministry doesn't revoke my attendance authorization based on the Path Between Worlds incident," Wednesday confirmed. "Though Mother assures me the family solicitor has precedent for defending unconventional magical methodologies under cultural heritage protections." As they boarded the train, finding a compartment together, Hermione asked the question that had been bothering her since the mirror chamber. "Wednesday, what would you have seen in the mirror of Erist? If you'd looked into it properly, not just with Harry?" Wednesday considered this. "Likely my family. Together, continuing our traditions without external interference or normalization pressure." She paused. "Though perhaps with slightly improved access to certain restricted potions ingredients the ministry currently classifies as catastrophically dangerous." Ron laughed. "Only you would wish for more dangerous potions." "Danger is subjective," Wednesday replied. Great-grandmother maintained that the truly dangerous elements are ignorance, conformity, and beige interior decorating. As the Hogwarts Express pulled away from Hogsmeade Station, Harry reflected on the extraordinary year that had begun with his discovery of the wizarding world and somehow culminated in friendship with 3 remarkable people, including a girl whose family considered near-death experiences gift-worthy occasions and who approached soul-containing evil wizards with scientific curiosity rather than fear. Hogwarts would never be the same with Wednesday Addams among its students. And neither would he. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.